The scratching sound began at midnight. Morgan Silverbane froze mid-stir, her wooden spoon suspended over a pot of venison stew that had become her only comfort through 6 months of solitary exile. The noise came again, deliberate, rhythmic. Nothing like the wind that howled through the ancient pines surrounding her weathered cabin in the northern wilderness. Scratch, scratch, pause, scratch. Her wolf stirred for the first time in weeks, a drowsy rumble beneath her ribs that felt more like dying embers than the inferno it once was. Since the rejection, her inner beast had retreated so deep that some mornings Morgan wondered if she was still a shifter at all, or just a broken woman playing pretend in the wilderness. "Go away," she whispered toward the door. Though her voice barely carried across the small room, the scratching stopped. Relief flooded through her for exactly 3 seconds before a new sound replaced it, a whimper so raw and desperate it bypassed her brain entirely and struck something ancient in her chest. Her wolf lurched upward like a drowning victim breaching the surface. Morgan gripped the counter until her knuckles turned bone white. She knew better than to answer midnight calls in the deep woods. Knew better than to trust anything that approached her sanctuary, especially on a blood moon night when the veil between savage and civil grew dangerously thin. The last time she'd trusted her instincts around pack wolves, she'd ended up publicly humiliated before 200 witnesses. Her mate bond severed before it could fully form. Alpha Victor Blackthorn's words still carved into her memory like scars. "I, Victor Blackthorn, reject you, Morgan Silverbane. You are not worthy to stand beside an alpha. You are not worthy of this pack. You are Omega, nothing more." Morgan glanced at the leather-bound journal on her table, her grandmother's diary, filled with stories of another time when Luna wolves walked proudly among packs. Fairy tales, she'd always thought. Until tonight, when something inside her was awakening. The whimper came again, accompanied by a sound that made her blood freeze and boil simultaneously. 2 distinct voices, both male, both trembling with what could only be hypothermia or agony. Maybe both. "Please." The word was barely human, scraped raw by cold and desperation. "Please. Freezing. Dying." Her hand moved toward the door handle before her conscious mind caught up. She jerked it back as if the wood had burned her. This was a trick. It had to be. Victor testing her resolve, or worse, pack enforcers sent to finish what the rejection started. Omegas who refused to submit to their new status didn't get second chances in the Ironwood pack. They got disappeared. But her wolf was awake now, fully awake, clawing at her insides with a frenzy she hadn't felt since when? She'd never felt anything like this before. "Not Trick," another voice, deeper, cracking on the syllables. "Morgan, please, it's Gabriel and Marcus." The names hit her like silver bullets. Gabriel Hayes, Marcus Stone, the 2 beta wolves who'd stood at Victor's side during her rejection, who'd watched with unreadable expressions as she'd been dragged from packlands and dumped at the territorial border with nothing but the clothes on her back and a warning never to return, who'd said nothing, done nothing, been nothing but beautiful statues bearing witness to her destruction. Yet their voices made her wolf surge toward the door like it recognized something her human mind refused to acknowledge. Morgan fingered the dog tags hanging around her neck, not hers, but her father's. An Omega like her, he'd served both country and pack, only to die alongside her mother in what the pack called a territorial dispute. She'd been 18 when they were killed, 21 when Victor rejected her. Now, at 27, she'd spent nearly a decade surviving on her own. "What are you really doing at my door?" she asked, her voice stronger now, tinged with the authority that came from surviving when everyone expected her to perish. Why would the wolves who watched my exile now beg for my help? Blood moon, 7th cycle. Gabriel's voice weakened. Prophecy. He knew. Morgan's breath caught. 6 months ago, she might have believed in fate, in the moon goddess's divine plan, in destined mates and sacred bonds. She'd believed that when her 21st birthday came and her wolf finally matured enough to recognize her mate, everything would change. She'd been right about the change part, just not in the way she'd imagined. The Ironwood pack had gathered for the spring awakening ceremony in the great clearing beneath the ancient oak. 200 wolves arranged in concentric circles according to rank, their excitement palpable in the crisp mountain air. Morgan had stood in the outer ring with the other Omegas, her heart thundering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She'd felt it building all week, the restlessness, the heightened senses, the way her wolf paced beneath her skin like a caged creature counting down to freedom. And then Alpha Victor Blackthorn had stepped into the ceremonial circle, his midnight black wolf form rippling with power, and Morgan's entire world had tilted sideways. The mate bond had snapped into place like a bear trap closing around her heart, immediate, agonizing, absolute. Golden threads of connection had blazed between them, visible in the supernatural half-light of the ceremony. For one perfect moment, she'd seen recognition flash in his silver eyes. He'd known. He'd felt it too. Then his lip had curled back in disgust. "No," he'd said, his alpha voice carrying to every corner of the clearing. "This is a mistake. The goddess has erred." Morgan had stood frozen while her new, fragile mate bond burned like acid in her veins. Around her, pack members had shifted uncomfortably. Mates were sacred. Rejecting a true mate just wasn't done. The consequences could be catastrophic for both parties. But Victor was alpha, and alphas didn't bond with omegas. It would be a humiliation, a weakening of the pack hierarchy, an upset to the natural order that had governed werewolf society for millennia. She'd barely registered Gabriel and Marcus standing behind their alpha, both in human form, both watching her with expressions she couldn't decipher through her shock. Later, she would replay that moment 1,000 times, searching their faces for what? Sympathy? Regret? The same inexplicable pull she'd felt standing near them? At the time, she'd had eyes only for Victor as he spoke the formal words that shattered her soul. The rejection ceremony had lasted less than 5 minutes. The agony had lasted days, her wolf howling in anguish, her body racked with fever as the severed bond cauterized itself into scar tissue. Pack healers had come and gone with pitying looks and useless herbs. Pack law said she could stay if she submitted to her Omega role without question, accepted a forced mate of the Alpha's choosing, and never spoke of what had happened. Morgan had chosen exile instead. They'd given her 1 hour to gather her things. Victor had assigned Gabriel and Marcus to escort her to the border. Final humiliation, being watched by the pack's most elite warriors as if she might turn rabid at any moment. Neither had spoken during the 2-hour walk. Neither had looked at her directly. And when they'd left her at the territorial marker and disappeared back into the forest, neither had looked back. She'd wandered for 3 weeks before she'd found the abandoned trapper's cabin tucked into a valley that smelled of no pack, claimed by no territory. The structure was half collapsed, the roof leaked, and animals had made homes in the corners, but it was hers. She'd spent 2 months making it livable, learning to hunt and fish and trap, teaching herself the ward work her grandmother had tried to show her before she died. Protective circles that would alert her to any supernatural presence approaching. The wards had never triggered before tonight. Morgan had built a life in this cabin, a small, lonely, safe life where no one could hurt her because no one could reach her. She split her own firewood. She tanned her own leather. She talked to herself and the birds, and occasionally her reluctant wolf, who mostly preferred to sulk in the depths of her psyche like a wounded animal. She'd learned to sleep without nightmares, to eat without tasting ash, to exist without the phantom ache of a bond that had been ripped away before it could fully form. She'd learned to survive. And now, on a blood moon night, when magic ran thick and dangerous through the forest, when her wards should have held against any intrusion, 2 wolves from her past were dying on her doorstep. Morgan stared at the door as if she could see through it. Her wolf pressed against her consciousness, more alert than it had been in months, radiating an urgency that felt almost frantic. "They watched you break," she reminded herself. "They did nothing." But another voice whispered beneath that truth. What if they couldn't? What if there's more to the story? She'd spent 6 months building walls, 6 months teaching herself that trust was a luxury Omegas couldn't afford, 6 months learning to live with the permanent ache of rejection. Was she really going to tear all that down for 2 wolves who'd earned exactly nothing from her except maybe her resentment? The whimpering had stopped. The silence was somehow worse. A howl shattered the stillness like a gunshot through glass. It wasn't the desperate whimpering from before. This was something primal, something that bypassed every rational thought Morgan had been clinging to, and spoke directly to the wolf she'd been trying to keep sedated. The sound rolled through the night air, through the cabin walls, through her skin and bones, until it resonated in the hollow space behind her sternum, where her broken mate bond still ached. Her wolf didn't just stir, it erupted. Morgan's legs buckled, and she caught herself against the counter, gasping, as her wolf surged forward with a force she hadn't experienced since before the rejection. Her vision sharpened until she could see individual dust motes floating in the firelight. Her hearing expanded until the crackling logs sounded like breaking branches, and she could distinguish 2 separate heartbeats outside her door. Both rapid, both weakening, both calling to something fundamental in her DNA. "No," she whispered, but her wolf wasn't listening anymore. Her hand reached for the door handle. She watched it move as if it belonged to someone else, as if her body had decided to mutiny against her mind's better judgment. The iron was cold against her palm. She'd blessed it with mountain ash and silver shavings to repel supernatural threats. It should have burned any wolf who touched it. It didn't burn her. The wards she'd spent months perfecting dissolved the moment she turned the handle, unraveling like smoke in wind. She should have been alarmed, should have questioned why protections that strong would simply yield. But her wolf was in control now, driving her forward with single-minded determination. The door swung open, and cold air rushed in, carrying with it the scent of pine and ice and blood. And something else, something that made her wolf keen with recognition and hunger and a territorial possessiveness that terrified her. 2 men lay collapsed across her threshold, half in and half out of the cabin, their bodies wreathed in frost that glittered silver under the blood moon's crimson light. They were barely conscious, their skin pale as death, their lips tinged blue. But even in their weakened state, even covered in ice and obviously dying, they were beautiful in that devastating way that high-ranking wolves always were, all sharp angles and coiled muscle and dangerous grace. Gabriel Hayes, Marcus Stone, she'd know them anywhere, though she'd spent 6 months trying to forget their faces. Gabriel, with his auburn hair now matted with frost, his strong jaw clenched against shivers he couldn't control, his hazel eyes, currently glazed with hypothermia, that had always seemed to see too much. He'd been Victor's strategic advisor, the one who planned patrol routes and negotiated with neighboring packs, the one whose intelligence made him valuable enough to sit at the Alpha's right hand, despite not being blood family. And Marcus, broader and darker, his black hair frozen in spikes around his face, his olive skin ashen with cold, his dark eyes fighting to focus on her face with an intensity that would have made her step back if her wolf wasn't holding her in place. He was the pack's head enforcer, the one other wolves crossed the street to avoid, the one whose presence in a room made dominance-challenged males suddenly remember important business elsewhere. They'd been untouchable in the pack hierarchy, powerful, respected, feared. Now they were dying on her doorstep, and her traitorous wolf was screaming at her to help them. "Morgan!" Gabriel's voice was barely audible, his breath coming out in white puffs that dissipated too quickly. "Not Trick, Silver," Marcus managed, and the single word sent ice down her spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. Silver poisoning, the only thing that could bring down wolves of their caliber. And even then, it would take a massive dose delivered directly into the bloodstream. This wasn't an accident. This was an assassination attempt. Her mind raced even as her body moved forward without conscious direction, her hands reaching for Gabriel's frost-covered arm. The moment her skin made contact, the world exploded. The mate bond didn't snap into place, it detonated, like lightning striking the same spot twice, like every nerve ending in her body simultaneously catching fire. Golden threads erupted between them, blazing so bright she could see them with her physical eyes, not just her supernatural senses. But these threads were different from the ones that had connected her to Victor. Those had been singular, elegant, a one-way bridge between Alpha and Omega. These were a web, a network, threads connecting her to Gabriel, her to Marcus, Gabriel to Marcus, and all three of them together in a pattern she'd only read about in her grandmother's oldest books. A pattern that shouldn't be possible. A triad bond. A true three-way mating. Morgan jerked her hand back, but the damage was done, or the connection was made, depending on how she wanted to look at it. The threads remained, pulsing with golden light that seemed to grow stronger even as Gabriel and Marcus grew weaker. Through the bond, she could feel them now, Gabriel's sharp mind fracturing at the edges as the silver spread through his system, Marcus's fierce will fighting a losing battle against the poison, and underneath it all, a desperate, aching longing directed at her that was so intense it stole her breath. "You knew," she whispered, the words coming out harsh, accusatory. Her wolf snarled in her chest, torn between the instinct to protect her mates. Her mates? How was that even possible? And the very rational human need to understand what the hell was happening. "Always," Marcus whispered, his eyes finally focusing on her face with devastating clarity. "Since ceremony, we felt it, too." The world tilted. Morgan's knees hit the wooden floor hard enough to bruise. "What?" "Damon knew." Gabriel's words were slurring now, the silver working faster. "Felt our bonds. To you. Couldn't allow." Her mind struggled to process this. At the spring awakening ceremony, she'd felt the mate bond snap with Victor, clear and undeniable. But Gabriel and Marcus had been standing right behind him, close enough that she'd registered their presence, but too distracted by Victor's rejection to pay attention to anything else. Had there been other threads forming that night, connections she'd been too overwhelmed to notice? "He rejected me to keep me away from you," she said, her voice hollow even to her own ears. "To keep us from claiming you." Marcus's hand moved in the frost, reaching toward her with fingers that barely trembled. "Triad bonds. Threaten Alpha. Power sharing. He couldn't allow it. Couldn't risk three wolves bonding together, creating a power structure that might challenge his authority, especially if one of them was an Omega who, according to pack law, shouldn't have any power at all. So he'd rejected her himself, publicly and brutally, ensuring that she'd be too broken to notice if anyone else tried to form a bond with her. Then he'd exiled her, removing her from Packlands before Gabriel and Marcus could act on what they'd felt. And they'd let him. They'd escorted her to the border and walked away. "You left me." The accusation burned in her throat like the silver was burning through their veins. "You felt the mate bond, and you just walked away." "Alpha Command," Gabriel gasped, his body convulsing with shivers. "Couldn't fight. Direct order. Alpha Command." The supernatural compulsion that forced lower-ranked wolves to obey their pack leader, turning them into puppets who couldn't resist, even if they wanted to. She'd forgotten about that. Omegas were so low in the hierarchy that alphas rarely bothered commanding them directly, preferring to let social pressure and physical intimidation do the work instead. But Gabriel and Marcus were betas, high enough to have free will in most circumstances, but still bound by the alpha's direct orders. If Victor had commanded them not to interfere, not to speak, not to claim her, they would have had no choice. Why now? She was still on her knees, frozen in indecision, while her mates, she still couldn't process that, died inches away. Why come here? Why risk this? Breaking free. Marcus's eyes were starting to glaze again. Been planning? Months? Tonight? Blood moon weakens? Alpha Command? Got away. He coughed, black blood spattering his lips. Came to you. But Victor. Found out. Gabriel's breathing was becoming labored. Sent enforcers with silver rounds. Ambushed us at border. They'd been shot. Silver bullets designed to kill wolves quickly and efficiently, probably laced with wolfsbane to prevent healing. They'd taken what should have been lethal wounds and somehow dragged themselves through miles of frozen forest to reach her cabin, driven by a mate bond that shouldn't exist and desperation that must have been building for 6 months. Through their connection, she felt the silver spreading, felt their wolves retreating deeper and deeper to protect their cores, felt their lives slipping away like water through her fingers. She had 3 choices. 1, let them die. They'd watched her exile without fighting for her. Sure, maybe they'd had good reasons, but that didn't erase 6 months of suffering alone, didn't erase the hole in her chest where her first mate bond had been ripped out, didn't make her any less terrified of opening herself up to that kind of pain again. 2, try to help them with mundane healing. Pull them inside, get them warm. Attempt to extract the silver with her limited medical knowledge. Probably fail and watch them die anyway, but at least she'd have tried. At least her conscience would be clear. 3, accept the bond. Let it complete. Let the mating connection fully form and hope that whatever supernatural power came from a triad bond would be enough to save them. Option 3 was insane, completely insane. Mate bonds were permanent. There was no rejection ceremony for triads because they were so rare that most packs didn't even have protocols for them. If she accepted this bond, she'd be tied to Gabriel and Marcus forever. Bound to wolves she barely knew, who'd already hurt her once, even if it hadn't been entirely their fault. Her wolf didn't care about logic. It was howling now, throwing itself against her ribcage, demanding she claim what was hers, demanding she save her mates regardless of the cost. Morgan's gaze fell on her grandmother's journal, open to a page she'd read 100 times without understanding. The 7th blood moon brings the crimson luna, when 3 become 1 and break the chains of ancient tyranny. She'd always thought it was poetry. Now she wondered if it was prophecy. If I help you, she heard herself say, what happens after? You expect me to just, what, come back to the pack? Play happy family while Victor's still alpha? Neither of them answered. Gabriel's eyes had closed, and Marcus was struggling to keep his open, their heartbeats growing fainter through the bond. She was losing them. Morgan made her decision before her rational mind could talk her out of it. She grabbed both of them, one hand on Gabriel's frost-covered wrist, the other on Marcus's shoulder, and pulled. They were dead weight, their muscles unresponsive, but her wolf lent her strength she didn't normally possess, and she managed to drag them fully across the threshold into the cabin. The moment they were inside, the temperature seemed to rise 10 degrees, the fire flaring brighter in the hearth as if responding to some unspoken command. She kicked the door shut and heard the ward slam back into place. Different now, changed by the new presence she'd allowed into her sanctuary. Gabriel and Marcus lay tangled on her floor, their breathing shallow, frost melting off their skin in puddles that spread across the wooden planks. The silver bullets were still inside them. She could see the entry wounds now, black veins spreading from each puncture like poisonous spider webs. Through the bond, she felt the exact moment Gabriel's wolf gave up, retreating so deep she couldn't sense it anymore. Marcus's followed seconds later. They were dying. She'd pulled them inside, but it wasn't enough. They needed more, needed the full bond, needed her to accept what the goddess was offering. Even though it terrified her more than exile and rejection and 6 months of loneliness combined, Morgan placed her hands over their hearts, feeling the weak, irregular beats beneath her palms. "Don't you dare die on my floor," she whispered fiercely. "I didn't survive 6 months alone just to watch you bleed out in my cabin." The golden threads pulsed brighter, responding to her proximity, to her touch, to the decision crystallizing in her chest like ice forming over a lake. She'd opened the door. She'd let them in. Now she had to decide if she was brave enough, or foolish enough, to let them stay. Morgan had learned basic field medicine from her grandmother, back when she thought her future might involve helping pack members during full moon runs or tending to hunting injuries. She'd never imagined she'd be using those skills to extract silver bullets from wolves who were supposed to be her mates, while her hands shook so badly she could barely hold the knife steady. "This is insane," she muttered, laying out supplies on the floor beside Gabriel's unconscious form. "Completely insane. I should have left you outside. Should have let the forest take you. Should have—" Her wolf snarled, and the sound actually left her throat, a low, warning growl that surprised her. She hadn't heard her own wolf vocalize in months. The creature had been so dormant, so deeply buried beneath layers of pain and survival instinct, that Morgan had started to wonder if the rejection had damaged something fundamental. But now her wolf was awake and furious and absolutely determined to save their mates, even if Morgan's human mind was still trying to process the impossibility of having two. She cut away Gabriel's shirt first, her grandmother's hunting knife slicing through the frozen fabric with practiced efficiency. His chest was a roadmap of scars, evidence of years spent enforcing pack law and defending territory. But the fresh wounds stood out like accusations. 3 entry points, all center mass, all perfectly placed to hit vital organs. Whoever had shot him had known exactly what they were doing. Black veins spread from each wound in fractal patterns, the silver poisoning working its way through his circulatory system, like corrupted roots. His skin was ice cold despite being inside now, his lips still tinged blue, his heartbeat so faint she had to press her ear against his chest to confirm it was still there. The moment her cheek touched his bare skin, heat exploded through the mate bond. Morgan gasped and jerked back, but the damage was done, or the connection was deepened, depending on perspective. The golden threads between them flared brilliant white, and suddenly she could feel everything. Not just his fading heartbeat, but the silver burning through his veins, his wolf's desperate retreat into the deepest part of his consciousness, his mind's fragmented thoughts that were mostly just her name, repeated like a prayer. Morgan, 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 please, Morgan. And underneath all of it, she felt something else, something that made her throat tight and her eyes burn with tears she refused to shed. She felt his love for her, raw and absolute and completely unearned, given freely despite the fact that they'd barely spoken, that she'd spent 6 months hating him, that she had every reason to let him die on her floor. He loved her the way wolves loved their mates, wholly, irrevocably, with a devotion that transcended logic or time or circumstance. It was terrifying. "Stop that," she whispered, pressing her palm over the worst wound. Her hand came away black with poisoned blood. "Stop feeling things at me. I can't think when you're—" But Gabriel couldn't hear her. And even if he could, mate bonds didn't come with mute buttons. She was feeling what he felt, whether she wanted to or not, the connection growing stronger with every passing second. She forced herself to focus on the immediate problem. Silver bullets. 3 of them, lodged deep in muscle tissue, slowly killing him. She'd need to extract them before she could even think about healing the wounds. And extracting them would require— Her hands began to glow. Morgan froze, staring at her palms as soft golden light emanated from her skin like she'd swallowed the sun. This wasn't normal. Wolves healed fast, but they didn't glow, didn't produce light from their bodies like some kind of supernatural lantern. Through the bond, she felt Gabriel's wolf stir, drawn by the light like a moth to flame. "What the hell?" She turned her hands over, watching the glow intensify. It didn't hurt. If anything, it felt right, like her body was finally doing something it had been designed for, but never had the chance to attempt. The light spread up her arms, across her chest, until she was luminous in the dim cabin. And where the light touched Gabriel's wounds, the black veins began to recede. Morgan's breath caught. She pressed both glowing hands against his chest and watched in amazement as the silver poisoning retreated from the light like shadows fleeing the dawn. The bullets themselves began to surface, pushed out by some force she didn't understand, rising through tissue and muscle until they clinked onto the floor beside him. 3 misshapen pieces of silver that had been killing him moments ago. The wounds closed behind them, not completely, but enough that he was no longer bleeding out on her floor. Gabriel's heartbeat strengthened, his breathing deepened, color began to return to his lips, and his skin lost some of its deathly pallor. Through the bond, she felt his wolf creeping cautiously back toward consciousness, drawn by her light and the promise of healing. "How am I doing this?" She stared at her still glowing hands. "Omegas can't. We don't have—" "You're not just Omega," Marcus rasped from behind her. Morgan spun to find him watching her with eyes that were clearer than they'd been moments ago, consciousness clawing its way back despite the silver still poisoning his system. He'd propped himself up on one elbow, the movement obviously costing him enormous effort, frost still clinging to his dark hair. "What are you talking about?" She moved toward him, her hands still glowing, still radiating that strange golden light. "Luna." The word came out reverent, odd. "You're a Luna. That's why Victor rejected you. That's why he couldn't let us bond with you. He knew." Luna. The word hung in the air between them like a bomb waiting to detonate. Lunas were myth, legend, the kind of thing grandmothers told in stories around winter fires. Powerful female wolves who could match or exceed alphas in strength, who could heal their pack members with a touch, who commanded loyalty not through dominance, but through an intrinsic rightness that made other wolves want to follow them. They appeared once in a generation if a pack was lucky, once in a century if they weren't. Morgan had spent 27 years being told she was Omega, the lowest rank, the weakest designation, meant to submit and serve and bear strong children for more powerful wolves. She'd internalized that truth, built her identity around it, accepted the limitations it imposed. "I can't be Luna," she said, but her glowing hands argued otherwise. "I was tested at birth. They said what you were at birth." Marcus's voice was getting stronger as her presence seemed to bolster him, the mate bond already working to sustain him, even incomplete. "Not what you'd become. Luna powers manifest at maturity, at the spring awakening." The ceremony. The moment her wolf had fully matured and recognized not one mate, but 3. The moment everything had gone wrong, or the moment everything had tried to go right, and Victor had intervened. "He felt it," she whispered, pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. "When the bond snapped between us, he felt that I wasn't just Omega anymore." And he felt our bonds forming. Marcus managed to push himself up to sitting, his dark eyes never leaving her face. A triad bond with a Luna at its center. It would have created a power structure that could challenge him, maybe even overthrow him. So he rejected me first. Bitterness coated her tongue like poison. "Before I could realize what I was, before we could complete the triad." "Before you could become what you were always meant to be," Gabriel murmured, and she turned to find him conscious now, hazel eyes tracking her with an intensity that made her pulse jump. "Our Luna, our mate, our everything." The reverence in his voice made her want to run, made her want to stay, made her want to scream at the unfairness of finding her true mates only after she'd been broken by a false one. "Don't!" she said sharply, turning back to Marcus before she could do something stupid like cry or throw herself at Gabriel, or accept a bond she still wasn't sure she wanted. "Don't put me on a pedestal. Don't make me into something I'm not." "We're not making you into anything." Marcus held out his hand, palm up, an offering. "We're just seeing what was always there." She stared at his hand like it might bite her. The golden threads connecting them pulsed with want and need, and that same overwhelming love she'd felt from Gabriel. Through the bond, she could sense Marcus's wolf now too, battered but alive, radiating protective, fierce devotion that should have been reserved for someone worthy of it. Someone who wasn't a broken Omega who'd spent 6 months hiding in the woods. Except she wasn't just Omega anymore. Maybe she never had been. "You still need healing," she said, instead of addressing any of the enormity hanging between them. Let me finish this." She placed her glowing hands on Marcus's chest, feeling his sharp intake of breath as her light met his darkness. His wounds were worse than Gabriel's. 4 bullets instead of 3, and they'd been inside him longer, the silver poisoning spreading further. Black veins covered his torso like a net designed to strangle his heart. But her light pushed it back, slowly, Methodically, like dawn breaking over mountains, she drove the silver from his system and watched the bullets surface and fall away. His wounds closed, his heartbeat strengthened, his wolf rose from the depths and pressed against his consciousness, reaching for her through the bond with desperate gratitude. By the time she finished, she was shaking with exhaustion, the glow fading from her skin until she was just Morgan again, confused and scared and surrounded by 2 male wolves who were looking at her like she'd hung the moon. "Thank you." Gabriel sat up slowly, testing his newly healed body. "You saved our lives." "I should have let you die," she said, but there was no heat behind it. Her wolf wouldn't have let her, and they all knew it. "But you didn't." Marcus reached for her hand, and this time she let him take it, too tired to fight the mate bond's insistent pull. His fingers were warm now, no longer frozen, and the contact sent pleasant shivers up her arm. "You let us in. You healed us. You felt the bond." "I don't know what I felt. It was a lie, and everyone in the room knew it." "Yes, you do." Gabriel moved closer, careful not to crowd her, but close enough that she could smell him. Pine and winter storms, and underneath it all, a scent that was uniquely his. Her wolf purred at the smell, the traitorous creature. "You felt what we've been feeling for 6 months. The pull, the need, the certainty." "Certainty." She laughed, the sound brittle. "You're certain about the Omega who was rejected and exiled? The one who's been living alone in the woods like some kind of feral cat? That's who you want as your mate?" "Yes," they said simultaneously, their voices harmonizing in a way that resonated through the bond. "You're insane." "Probably," Marcus agreed, his thumbs stroking over her knuckles in a gesture that was simultaneously comforting and possessive. "But we're your kind of insane." She wanted to argue, wanted to pull away, wanted to rebuild the walls she'd so carefully constructed over 6 months of survival. But she was so tired, tired of being alone, tired of fighting her wolf, tired of pretending that healing them hadn't felt more right than anything she'd done since the rejection. "I can't go back to the pack," she said finally. "I won't. Not while Victor's still alpha." "We're not asking you to." Gabriel's voice was gentle. "We came here to be with you, not to drag you back." "Victor will come for you," she looked between them. "When you don't return, when the enforcers report back that you got away, he'll come, and he'll bring the whole pack." "Let him come." Marcus's eyes flashed gold, his wolf rising to the surface. "We'll be ready." "You'll be dead." She pulled her hand from his, standing on shaky legs. "You might be betas, but Victor's pure alpha bloodline going back 6 generations. He'll crush you, he'll kill you, and then he'll kill me for helping you." "Not if we complete the bond." Gabriel stood too, moving with the fluid grace of a predator despite being half dead minutes ago. "A triad bond with a Luna at its center. That's power Victor can't match. That's why he was afraid of it." "You don't know that I'm actually Luna." Even as she said it, she remembered the glow, the healing, the way the silver had retreated from her light. "Look at yourself," Marcus said quietly. Morgan glanced down and gasped. Her skin was glowing again, soft golden light pulsing in time with her heartbeat. And on her arms, just visible beneath the light, were marks she'd never seen before, intricate patterns like lace made of moonlight, spiraling from her wrists to her shoulders in designs that matched the Luna markings she'd only ever seen in her grandmother's oldest books. "No," she whispered, but the evidence was literally written on her skin. "This isn't... I can't be..." A howl split the night outside, long and loud and unmistakably commanding. An alpha's call, demanding submission and obedience. Victor had found them. Through the still-open mate bond, Morgan felt both Gabriel and Marcus tense, their wolves responding instinctively to their alpha's summons, even as they fought against it. The alpha command was pulling at them, trying to drag them back under Victor's control, trying to make them abandon her and return to their pack. "No!" Her voice came out as a growl, her wolf surging forward with protective fury. "You're not going anywhere!" She grabbed both their hands before she could second-guess the impulse. The moment their skin connected, power exploded through the cabin, her golden light flaring so bright that it illuminated the forest outside through the windows, so intense that she heard the wards around her sanctuary crack and reform into something stronger, something new. The Alpha command shattered like glass against stone. Gabriel and Marcus gasped simultaneously, their wolves breaking free from Victor's control as the mate bond reinforced, deepened, began to solidify into something permanent. Another howl came from outside, closer now, and this one was full of rage. "Accept our bond," Gabriel said urgently, squeezing her hand. "Accept us before Blood Moon Peak, or we die. The silver's gone, but the damage. We need the completed bond to fully heal, and you need us to face what's coming." "But we won't force you," Marcus added, his dark eyes meeting hers with devastating sincerity. "If you tell us to leave, if you want us gone, we'll go. We'll lead him away, give you a chance to run." The mate bond pulsed between them, golden threads growing brighter with every passing second. Outside, she could hear movement now, paws on snow, multiple wolves circling her cabin. And above it all, Victor's presence like a storm about to break. She had minutes, maybe less, to make a choice that would determine the rest of her life. Accept the bond and face Victor with her mates at her side, trusting in power she'd only just discovered and a connection she still barely understood, or send them away and face the Alpha who'd already destroyed her once, alone in a cabin that suddenly felt far too fragile to protect her from what was coming. Her wolf knew which choice it wanted, was howling the answer like a battle cry. The question was whether Morgan was brave enough to listen. The cabin's windows exploded inward, glass shattered in a crystalline rain that caught the blood moon's light and transformed the air into a storm of crimson fragments. Morgan threw herself over Gabriel and Marcus instinctively, her body moving before her mind could process the threat, her wolf roaring to the surface with a ferocity that would have shocked her 6 months ago. But she wasn't the same wolf she'd been 6 months ago. Golden light erupted from her skin, forming a barrier that caught the glass mid-flight and suspended it in the air like frozen time. She stared at the hovering shards, her hands still gripping Gabriel and Marcus, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. "Did I just—" she started. "Yes," Gabriel breathed, awe coloring his voice. "Luna power, protective manifestation." The glass fell harmlessly to the floor, tinkling like broken wind chimes. Then Victor Blackthorne stepped through the shattered window frame, and every instinct Morgan possessed screamed at her to submit, to lower her eyes, to bare her throat in the automatic deference Omegas showed to Alphas. Her wolf snarled and held her ground. He was exactly as she remembered, tall and commanding, with silver eyes that glowed in the darkness, his midnight black hair pulled back to reveal the sharp angles of his face. Power radiated from him in waves that made the air feel thick and heavy, the supernatural weight of 6 generations of Alpha bloodline pressing down on everything in his vicinity. He wore dark tactical gear that emphasized the lean muscle of a predator built for violence, and the smile on his face was the kind that preceded bloodshed. "There you are," he said, his voice carrying the resonance of Alpha command even in casual conversation. "I've been looking everywhere for my wayward betas, and here I find them with the little Omega who should have learned her place by now." 4 more wolves entered behind him, enforcers in human form, all armed with silver-loaded weapons, all watching her with the cold assessment of soldiers who'd been given permission to kill. Morgan's hands tightened on Gabriel and Marcus, feeling them tense beneath her grip. Through the bond, she could feel their wolves rising, preparing for a fight they couldn't win, ready to die protecting her because that's what mates did. She wouldn't let them. "Get out!" Her voice came out steadier than she felt, carrying an authority she didn't know she possessed. "You're not welcome here." Victor laughed, a cold, calculated sound that held no humor. "I don't need your welcome, Morgan. This isn't pack territory, which means it's neutral ground, which means I can go wherever I please." His silver eyes dropped to where she still held Gabriel and Marcus's hands. Though I see you've been busy making friends with my property." "They're not property." The words came out as a growl, her wolf pressing against her consciousness with barely contained rage. "They're not yours." Funny. Victor took a step closer, and Morgan felt Gabriel and Marcus try to move in front of her, but she held them in place with a strength that surprised all three of them. "I distinctly remember them swearing oaths of loyalty to me, blood oaths, the kind that bind beta wolves to their alpha for life." "Blood oaths mean nothing compared to mate bonds," Marcus said, his voice rough but defiant. "You know this. You've always known." "Ah, yes, the mate bond." Victor's smile widened, showing too many teeth. "The sacred connection that transcends all others, the divine gift from the moon goddess herself." He moved closer still, his presence filling the cabin like smoke. "Tell me, Morgan, did they explain to you exactly what happened at your spring awakening? The full story?" The full story. Through the bond, she felt Gabriel's flash of panic, Marcus's surge of protectiveness. But underneath it all was guilt. Deep, aching guilt that they'd been carrying for 6 months. "They told me enough," she said carefully. "Did they tell you that they felt the mate bond snap with you the same moment I did?" Victor's eyes glittered with malicious amusement. "That they knew you were their mate, but said nothing? Did nothing?" "You commanded them," she started. "I commanded them after," Victor interrupted. "After I rejected you, after the bond between us broke and left you screaming on the ground, they stood there for a full minute. A full minute, Morgan, feeling their mate bonds with you solidify, feeling your pain through the connection, and they did nothing." The words hit like physical blows. She turned to look at Gabriel and Marcus, searching their faces for denial, for explanation, for anything that would make this hurt less. Their expressions confirmed the truth. "We wanted to stop it," Gabriel said urgently, his hazel eyes pleading. "The moment Victor started the rejection ceremony, we tried to step forward, tried to claim you first, but—" "You hesitated," Victor supplied helpfully. "Because claiming an Omega publicly, especially one bonded to your Alpha, would have been social suicide. You would have been exiled, stripped of your ranks, made outcasts alongside her." "So you watched," Morgan said flatly, the betrayal cutting deeper than the rejection had. Victor had been a mate chosen by fate, but one she barely knew. Gabriel and Marcus were wolves she'd admired from afar, respected, even harbored secret crushes on during pack gatherings. Finding out they'd felt the bond and hesitated, even for a minute, felt like being rejected all over again. "We were afraid," Marcus admitted, and the raw honesty in his voice made her chest ache. "We were cowards. We felt the bond, and we were terrified of what it would mean, what we'd lose, how the pack would react. And in that minute of fear, Victor completed his rejection. And you collapsed, and then it was too late. Too late because I commanded them to stay silent." Victor continued, clearly enjoying this. "Too late because by the time they'd worked up the courage to act, you were already broken, already exiling yourself, already running from a pack that would never accept you as anything but Omega." "Except she's not just Omega, is she?" Gabriel's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "That's what you actually couldn't allow. You felt it the moment the bond snapped, felt that she was Luna, felt that her power could rival yours." Victor's smile finally slipped, replaced by something harder, more dangerous. "Careful, Gabriel." "Why? We're already dead. You sent enforcers with silver bullets to kill us. The only reason we're alive is because our Luna healed us." "She's not Luna," Victor's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "She's a confused Omega who healed you out of misplaced compassion. Nothing more." "Then why are you here?" Morgan asked, finding her voice again despite the betrayal still churning in her gut. "If I'm just a confused Omega, why bring 4 enforcers armed with silver? Why track them across pack territory in the middle of Blood Moon? Why risk being away from Packlands when every other Alpha is consolidating power tonight?" She saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke it. "Because you're afraid," she continued, the pieces falling into place with devastating clarity. You rejected me to prevent the triad bond from forming. You exiled me to keep me away from Gabriel and Marcus. And when they escaped tonight to find me, you panicked." "I don't panic," Victor said coldly. "You panicked," Marcus repeated, and through the bond, Morgan felt his satisfaction at finally seeing their alpha rattled. "Because you knew that if we completed the triad bond with a Luna at its center, your hold on the pack would shatter. 3 bonded wolves, one of them Luna, that's a power structure that could challenge you." "That could overthrow you," Gabriel added, his tactical mind clearly working through the implications. "More than challenge, a Luna can call loyalty from pack members without dominance, without force. She can heal them, protect them, offer them something you never could, safety that doesn't come with the threat of violence. If Morgan accepts us, if she becomes our Luna fully, every wolf in Ironwood will feel the pull of her power. They'll have a choice: follow the alpha who rules through fear, or follow the Luna who leads through love." Victor's control finally cracked. His eyes flashed pure gold as his wolf surged to the surface, power rolling off him in waves that made the remaining glass in the window frames rattle and the wooden cabin walls groan. The enforcers behind him tensed, hands moving to their weapons. "You think I'd allow that?" Victor's voice resonated with alpha command, the supernatural compulsion that could bring lesser wolves to their knees. "You think I'd let you waltz back in and undo everything?" "Wait." Morgan's mind snagged on something in that angry confession. "Luna duties? I never had Luna duties. I was Omega." Victor's expression shuddered, but it was too late. He'd revealed too much. "You knew," she whispered, horror and fury warring in her chest. "Before the spring awakening, you knew I was going to manifest as Luna." "My father told me." The admission came out flat, matter of fact. Alpha bloodlines can sometimes sense Luna potential in unmated females. It's how historically we've ensured that Luna's bonded with alphas, maintaining proper pack hierarchy. He felt your potential when you turned 18, told me to watch you, to be ready to claim you when you matured. "So you planned it." Her voice shook with rage. "The public rejection, the humiliation. You planned all of it to break me before I could become a threat." "I planned to protect my pack," Victor corrected. "Luna power without alpha guidance is dangerous. You could have destabilized everything, especially if you'd bonded with not just 1, but 2 betas. A triad bond with you at the center would have created a competing power structure. Civil war, pack division. I did what was necessary." "You destroyed her," Marcus snarled, his wolf so close to the surface that his eyes were more gold than brown. "You took a gift from the moon goddess and tried to crush it because you were afraid it would outshine you." "I took a potential problem and neutralized it," Victor's smile returned, cold and cruel. "And I did such a thorough job that even now, even knowing what you are, you still doubt yourself. Still think of yourself as rejected Omega rather than Luna. I broke something in you that night, Morgan, something that can't be healed by holding hands with lovesick betas." The words were designed to wound, and they did, because he was right. Even with the evidence of Luna power literally glowing on her skin, even with the mate bond thrumming between her and Gabriel and Marcus, part of her still felt like that shattered girl being dragged to the border and thrown away like garbage. "You're right," she said quietly, and felt both Gabriel and Marcus tense beside her. "You did break something in me. You took a young wolf who believed in fate and destiny and the goodness of her pack, and you shattered every one of those beliefs." She took a step forward, and to her satisfaction, one of the enforcers actually stepped back. "But broken things can be reforged stronger. Broken bones heal denser. Broken hearts build better walls." Her voice strengthened with each word. "And broken Omegas who are actually Lunas, they learn to survive. They learn to fight. They learn that the only wolves worth trusting are the ones who follow them through hell and back." The Luna markings on her arms began to glow, intricate patterns brightening until they cast shadows across the cabin walls. Behind her, she felt Gabriel and Marcus's wolves rising in response to hers, their power feeding into the incomplete bond and amplifying it. "You can't complete the bond," Victor said, but she heard the uncertainty in his voice now. "It's past midnight. Blood moon peaks at 1:00 a.m. You have less than an hour, and I'm not going anywhere." "Then watch," Morgan said, feeling something ancient and powerful uncoiling inside her. "Watch what you tried to destroy become something you can't control." She turned to Gabriel and Marcus, looking at them properly for the first time since Victor's revelations. They'd hesitated at her spring awakening. They'd watched her be rejected and exiled. They'd been cowards when she'd needed them to be brave. But they'd also spent 6 months planning an escape. They'd risked execution to find her. They'd taken silver bullets meant to kill them and dragged themselves through miles of frozen forest just to reach her door. They'd apologized. They'd been honest about their failures. And through the bond, she could feel the truth of their feelings, the love, the devotion, the desperate need to make amends for that 1 minute of hesitation that had cost all 3 of them 6 months of pain. She was still angry, still hurt, still working through layers of betrayal that would take time to fully process. But her wolf knew what it wanted, and maybe, just this once, she should trust her wolf. "Tell me something," she said, looking between her 2 mates. "If we complete this bond, if I accept you fully, what happens then? What are you offering me besides protection and pretty words?" "Everything," Gabriel said immediately. "Everything we are, everything we have. Our loyalty, our lives, our wolves. We'll spend every day earning your trust, proving we're worthy of the gift you're giving us." "We'll fight for you," Marcus added, his dark eyes intense. "We'll protect you. We'll stand between you and anyone who tries to hurt you, even if it means dying in the process. We'll never hesitate again." "And if I choose not to accept?" she had to ask, had to know they meant it when they said they wouldn't force her. "If I decide that what Victor took can't be given back, that I'm better off alone, what then?" Both of them flinched like she'd struck them, but Gabriel answered steadily. "Then we leave. We lead Victor and his enforcers away from here, and we never come back. We let you live your life without the complication of mates who failed you when it mattered most." "But Morgan," Marcus said urgently, sensing her wavering, "before you decide, you need to know. We're not asking you to forgive us. We're not asking you to forget what happened. We're just asking for the chance to stand beside you, to be what we should have been from the beginning." The blood moon hung heavy in the sky outside the broken windows, its crimson light painting everything in shades of violence and passion. The celestial clock was ticking toward 1 a.m., and Morgan could feel the pressure of the deadline like a noose tightening around all 3 of them. Accept the bond by Blood Moon Peak or watch them die. Not from silver now, but from the incomplete connection slowly poisoning them from the inside out. A partial mate bond was worse than no bond at all. It would eat at them until their wolves went feral and their minds broke, and they became the very monsters Pack Law said should be put down. She could save them, or she could let them go. The choice was hers. And for the first time in 6 months, that power felt like the gift it was supposed to be, rather than the curse it had become. "Accept our bond," Gabriel whispered, his hand finding hers in the chaos. "Please, Morgan, let us stand with you. Let us fix what we broke." "But we won't force you," Marcus repeated, his other hand settling warm and steady on her shoulder. "Even if refusing us kills us, even if Victor wins, the choice is yours and yours alone." Victor laughed from his position by the window, the sound ugly and triumphant. "She won't do it. She's too broken, too afraid." "Shut up," Morgan said, and the command in her voice made even the alpha fall silent. "I didn't survive 6 months alone by being afraid. I didn't heal myself from a rejection bond by being broken. And I sure as hell didn't pull 2 dying wolves into my cabin just to watch them be taken from me." She looked at Gabriel and Marcus, really looked at them. And through the bond, she felt everything they were offering laid bare before her, their hearts, their wolves, their futures, all of it hers for the taking if she was brave enough to reach out. "You hesitated once," she said. "Don't ever hesitate again." Then she kissed them both. The world exploded into golden light. Morgan had meant the kiss as acceptance, as the beginning of the bonding ritual that would tie them together permanently. What she hadn't anticipated was the sheer force of power that erupted the moment her lips touched Gabriel's, then Marcus's, sealing their connection with an intimacy that went beyond physical contact. The incomplete bond didn't just complete, it detonated. Golden threads blazed between them like lightning given form, wrapping around all three of them in patterns so complex and beautiful they defied description. The Luna markings on Morgan's arms flared brilliant white and began to spread, flowing across her shoulders and down her back in intricate designs that looked like lace made from starlight. Power rolled off her in waves that made the cabin's wooden walls groan and the remaining glass in the windows shatter outward. Through the bond, she felt everything. Gabriel's sharp intelligence suddenly accessible to her, like files opening in her mind. Marcus's warrior instincts merging with her own until she could sense threats before they materialized. Both of their wolves twining with hers in a dance that was simultaneously three separate entities and one unified whole. And underneath it all, she felt their love pouring into her through the connection. 6 months of longing and regret and desperate hope finally finding release. It was overwhelming. It was terrifying. It was the most right thing she'd ever experienced. Victor's roar of fury barely registered through the cascade of sensation. "No!" His alpha command slammed into the cabin like a physical force, trying to break their connection, to reassert his dominance over his wayward betas. "I command you, Gabriel. Marcus, break the bond. Return to your alpha. Obey me." The command bounced off the golden light surrounding them like arrows striking a steel shield. Morgan broke the kiss and turned to face Victor, feeling her mates move with her in perfect synchronization. They flanked her protectively, Gabriel on her left, Marcus on her right, but she could feel through the bond that they were following her lead now, not the other way around. The triad had shifted their hierarchy. She was Luna, and Luna led. "Your commands don't work on them anymore," she said, her voice resonating with a power that made even the enforcers take a step back. "They're mine now. They belong to our triad, not to your pack." Victor's eyes blazed pure gold, his wolf fully surfaced and furious. "You can't just steal pack members, you stupid girl." "Blood oaths are superseded by mate bonds," Gabriel finished calmly, though she could feel his satisfaction through their connection. "You know this. Every alpha knows this. The mate bond is sacred, inviolable. You can no more break it with commands than you can command the moon to stop rising." "Besides," Marcus added, his voice carrying a dangerous edge, "we were never truly yours. We swore those oaths under duress, under alpha compulsion, when we were too young to know better. A Luna's claim breaks false loyalty. Real loyalty can't be commanded. It has to be earned." Through the bond, Morgan felt something shift in both of them. The blood oaths Victor had mentioned. She could actually sense them now, feel the supernatural chains that had bound Gabriel and Marcus to their alpha since they'd come of age. Dark, restrictive things that had wrapped around their wolves like barbed wire, forcing obedience even when every instinct screamed rebellion. The triad bond was burning through those chains like acid through rope. She watched through their shared consciousness as the blood oaths crumbled, dissolving into nothing beneath the greater power of true mate bonds. Gabriel and Marcus both gasped as the last restrictions fell away, their wolves finally completely free for the first time in their adult lives. "You're going to regret this," Victor said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "All three of you. I'll make sure of it." But the threat sounded hollow even to Morgan's ears. Something had changed in the power dynamic. Victor was still alpha, still dangerous, but he was no longer untouchable. No longer the absolute authority he'd been just moments before. "We need to leave." Gabriel's voice came through the bond, rather than aloud, a new facet of their connection that allowed private communication. "Right now, he won't attack while the triad glow is active, but once it fades... There are more enforcers outside, Marcus added mentally. I can sense at least 6 surrounding the cabin, armed with silver. We need an escape route. Morgan sent back agreement through the bond, surprising herself with how naturally she adapted to this new form of communication. Aloud, she addressed Victor, keeping her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. You've lost tonight. Take your enforcers and go, or I'll show you exactly what Luna Power can do when it's defending its mates. Victor's smile was razor-sharp. You've manifested for what, 10 minutes? You have no idea how to use that power, little girl. And manifesting isn't the same as training. You're a firefly challenging the sun. Before she could respond, the cabin floor beneath them began to tremble. A low rumble built from somewhere deep in the earth, rising until the walls shook and dust rained from the ceiling beams. What is that? One of the enforcers asked, nervously glancing around. Morgan felt it before she understood it, a surge of pure, wild power responding to her need, to her desperate desire for escape. The Luna Power wasn't just inside her. It was connecting her to something larger, something primal that existed in the land itself. Run, she whispered to Gabriel and Marcus through the bond. On my signal, run for the back door. Don't stop. Don't look back. The rumbling intensified. Outside, wolves began to howl in alarm. Through the shattered windows, she saw trees swaying dangerously, though there was no wind. What are you doing? Victor demanded, the first flicker of genuine fear crossing his face. Stop this, Morgan smiled, feeling the power surge through her like an electric current. I'm not doing anything. The land is responding to Luna presence. The old magic remembers what you tried to make everyone forget. With a deafening crack, the earth in front of the cabin split open. A fissure zigzagged between Victor and Morgan, widening rapidly until it was a yawning chasm separating them. The enforcers scrambled backward, narrowly avoiding falling into the growing abyss. Snow and dirt and rocks tumbled into darkness as the land itself seemed to awaken and choose sides. Now! Morgan shouted both aloud and through the bond. She turned and ran, Gabriel and Marcus flanking her perfectly as they sprinted for the rear exit. Behind them, she heard Victor's enraged roar and the sound of gunfire, silver bullets embedding themselves in the cabin walls where they had stood moments before. They burst through the back door into the frozen night. The blood moon hung lower in the sky now, its crimson light painting the snow in shades of violence. Morgan felt, rather than saw, the enforcers circling to cut them off. 6 wolves in combat formation, moving with military precision through the trees. This way, Gabriel urged, veering sharply to the left. There's a ravine half a mile south that leads to the old hunting grounds. If we can reach it... A bullet whistled past Morgan's ear, so close she felt its heat. Another thudded into a tree trunk inches from Marcus's head, spraying bark and splinters across the snow. They were running full out now, their breath coming in white clouds as they pushed their bodies to superhuman speed. Through the bond, Morgan felt Gabriel calculating trajectories, mapping escape routes, analyzing their pursuers' formation for weaknesses. From Marcus came combat awareness. The distance to each threat, the estimated ammunition they carried, the best defensive positions if they were forced to fight. The triad connection was more than emotional. It was functional, practical, turning them into a coordinated unit that moved and thought as one. For a woman who'd spent 6 months alone, the intimacy of it was almost overwhelming. They're driving us east, Gabriel warned, away from the ravine. They've anticipated our route. We can't outrun them forever, Marcus added grimly. Not with Victor coordinating them through pack bonds. They'll wear us down, then close the trap. Morgan felt their fatigue building. Despite the healing she'd performed, both men had lost blood and endured silver poisoning. The bond was keeping them upright, but they weren't at full strength. And she herself was depleted from using Luna power she barely understood. They needed help. They needed... A whistle split the night air, 3 short bursts followed by one long tone. Both Gabriel and Marcus instantly changed direction, heading toward the sound without hesitation. "What are you doing?" Morgan demanded through the bond as she matched their pace. "Resistance signal," Gabriel explained tersely. "Underground network. Someone's offering extraction." "Could be a trap," she warned. "Could be our only chance," Marcus countered. "Either way, we're about to find out." They crested a small rise and found themselves looking down at a frozen stream cutting through the forest. A figure stood on the opposite bank, an older man with graying hair and a weathered face, wearing practical winter gear and carrying what looked like a medical bag. He beckoned urgently. "Thomas Reed." Gabriel identified him through the bond. "Pack healer. I didn't know he was part of the resistance." "Can we trust him?" Morgan asked, her instincts still screaming caution after 6 months of isolation. The answer came in the form of gunfire from behind them. The enforcers had caught up. Silver bullets tore through branches overhead, sending snow and wood fragments showering down on them. "No choice now," Marcus growled, grabbing her hand and pulling her down the slope toward the stream. Thomas Reed met them at the water's edge, his expression grave. "The ice will hold your weight, but hurry. They're jamming communications. But I've got a vehicle waiting on the North Road. 2 miles. Can you make it?" "We'll make it," Gabriel confirmed, already guiding Morgan onto the frozen stream. The ice cracked ominously beneath their feet, but held. Thomas produced a small glass vial filled with glowing blue liquid from his pocket. Without warning, he hurled it back up the slope where they'd just stood. It shattered against a tree, and instantly a thick, oily smoke began to spread, carrying with it the sharp tang of wolfsbane. "Scent blocker," Thomas explained, stepping onto the ice behind them. "Won't stop them long, but it'll confuse the trail." They moved swiftly across the frozen stream, using the ice to leave no footprints. Morgan's mind raced with questions. Who was this man? How did he know they needed help? Was this some elaborate trap set by Victor? As if sensing her thoughts, Thomas spoke quietly as they reached the far bank. "I was there when Victor rejected you. I saw what it did to you, what it did to these two." He nodded toward Gabriel and Marcus. "Some of us have been waiting a long time for tonight." "Some of who?" Morgan pressed. "Later," Thomas urged, leading them into the dense forest on the far side of the stream. "When we're safe." They ran in silence after that, conserving breath and energy. Through the bond, Morgan could feel Gabriel and Marcus's cautious trust of Thomas, not complete faith, but a tactical acceptance that he represented their best chance at escape. She let their judgment guide her for now, too new to this world of secret alliances and underground resistance to know who to trust. The 2 miles to the North Road felt like 20. By the time they spotted the battered SUV hidden among the trees, all 4 of them were gasping for breath, their clothing soaked with sweat despite the freezing temperatures. In the distance, wolf howls echoed. The enforcers had cut through the scent blocker and were back on their trail. "In," Thomas commanded, unlocking the vehicle with a remote key. "Quickly!" They piled into the SUV, Morgan sandwiched between her mates in the back seat while Thomas took the wheel. The engine roared to life, and they were moving, tires finding purchase on the snow-covered logging road that wound through the forest. "Where are you taking us?" Morgan asked, finally giving voice to the question that had been burning in her mind. Thomas's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere Victor won't look because he doesn't believe it exists." "The old territories," Gabriel said suddenly, realization dawning in his voice. "North of the mountains, but they've been abandoned for decades." "Not abandoned," Thomas corrected. "Hidden. There are things Victor doesn't know about the history of this region, things his father kept from him." "What things?" Morgan pressed. Thomas's expression turned grim. "The truth about Lunas, the prophecy, and why your grandmother left." The mention of her grandmother sent a jolt through Morgan. "You knew her?" "I served as her healer for 15 years before Victor's father forced her into exile." A sad smile touched his lips. "Elizabeth Silverbane, the last true Luna of the Northern Territories. Until now." The SUV climbed steadily as they talked, following switchback roads that rose into the mountains. Behind them the howls grew fainter as they put distance between themselves and their pursuers. The adrenaline of their escape began to ebb, leaving room for the bone-deep exhaustion that came from completing the bond and then immediately running for their lives.
Rest.
Thomas advised, noting their fatigue. "We have a few hours of driving ahead. Victor won't follow us into the high country tonight, not with blood moon fading. The old magic is too unpredictable up here, especially for an alpha with blood on his hands." Morgan wanted to press for more answers, but exhaustion was overwhelming her. The warmth of Gabriel and Marcus on either side, the steady thrum of the bond connecting them, the gentle rocking of the vehicle, it all conspired to pull her toward sleep. She fought it briefly, still wary of vulnerability, still not fully trusting Thomas despite Gabriel and Marcus's acceptance of him. But her mate's consciousness brushed against hers through the bond, soothing, reassuring. They would keep watch. They would protect her. She could rest. For the first time in 6 months, Morgan Silverbane closed her eyes and slept without fear. She dreamed of her grandmother, not as she'd known her in life, a fragile, aging woman with silver hair and gentle hands who told stories by the fire, but as she must have been in her prime. Tall and regal, with midnight black hair and eyes that glowed with golden light, wearing the intricate Luna markings that now adorned Morgan's own skin. They stood in a forest clearing Morgan didn't recognize, snow falling silently around them, moonlight filtering through bare branches. "You found your way," her grandmother said, her voice exactly as Morgan remembered it, warm and rich with wisdom earned through suffering. "I don't understand what's happening to me," Morgan confessed. "Any of it." Elizabeth Silverbane smiled sadly. "You were never meant to be Omega, child. Your designation was hidden to protect you. We hoped it would buy you time, that the prophecy might skip a generation." "What prophecy?" "The 7th blood moon brings the crimson Luna," her grandmother recited, "when 3 become 1 and break the chains of ancient tyranny." The same words from her journal, the same words that had haunted Morgan's dreams for months. "What does it mean?" she pressed. "It means you're more than Luna." Her grandmother's form seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, becoming simultaneously more substantial and more ethereal. "Your crimson Luna, the 7th daughter of the 7th Luna, born under blood moon, destined to restore balance to what was broken." "I don't want destiny," Morgan protested. "I just want to survive, to live without fear, to understand what I am." "Sometimes we don't choose our path, Morgan. Sometimes it chooses us." Elizabeth reached out as if to touch her face, but her hand passed through Morgan like smoke. "The bond you've formed tonight, it's only the beginning. Find Diana Steelheart. She guards what remains of the old knowledge. She'll help you understand the rest." "Diana Steelheart? Where do I find her?" "Follow the moon path through the Valley of Whispers. Trust your mates. Trust your wolf." Her grandmother's form began to fade. "And Morgan, be careful. Victor knows more than he should about the old ways. His father made sure of that. The Blackthorns have spent generations suppressing Luna power for a reason." "What reason? Grandmother, please!" But Elizabeth Silverbane was already gone, her form dissolving like mist in morning light. The dream forest darkened, the clearing vanished, and Morgan was falling through darkness. She jolted awake with a gasp, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The SUV had stopped. Outside the windows, dawn was breaking over mountains she didn't recognize, jagged peaks painted gold and rose with the first light of day. They were parked before a small cabin nestled in a stand of ancient pines, smoke curling from its chimney into the crystal-clear mountain air. Gabriel and Marcus were no longer beside her. Panic flared briefly before she sensed them through the bond, alive, alert, nearby. The driver's seat was empty too. She was alone in the vehicle. Morgan stepped out into ankle-deep snow, her breath clouding in the frigid morning air. The cabin door opened, and Thomas emerged, beckoning her forward. "Your mates are inside," he said, correctly interpreting her searching gaze. "Getting cleaned up. We have fresh clothes and hot food waiting, and some answers, if you're ready for them." The interior of the cabin was warm and surprisingly spacious. a main room with a crackling fireplace, rustic but comfortable furniture, and walls lined with books and what looked like medical supplies. A doorway led to what she assumed were sleeping quarters, and she could hear water running somewhere deeper in the building. "This is one of our safe houses," Thomas explained, gesturing for her to sit at a rough-hewn wooden table where a steaming mug waited. "The Resistance maintains several across the territories, places Victor doesn't know about." Morgan wrapped her cold hands around the mug, inhaling the rich scent of real coffee, a luxury she hadn't enjoyed in months. "What resistance? I didn't know there was organized opposition to Victor." Thomas settled across from her, his weathered face solemn. "There has been resistance to the Blackthorn line for 3 generations, ever since they began suppressing the old knowledge, rewriting pack histories, eliminating those who remembered how things used to be. My grandmother was part of this." It wasn't a question. Elizabeth was its heart. Thomas's voice carried deep respect. "She led the last major opposition before she was forced into exile. Many thought the resistance died with her departure. The rest of us went underground, gathering information, waiting for the prophecy to manifest." The prophecy about the Crimson Luna. Morgan sipped the coffee, letting its warmth spread through her. "I dreamed of my grandmother just now. She said I needed to find someone named Diana Steelheart." Thomas's eyebrows rose. "Elizabeth came to you in a dream? Already? The bond must be stronger than we thought." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Diana Steelheart is the last of the old alphas, 90 years old now, but still formidable. She's been guarding the ancient knowledge since before I was born, and she's been waiting for you, Morgan, for a long, long time." "Why me? Why now?" Thomas opened his mouth to answer, but was interrupted as Gabriel and Marcus entered the room. They were freshly showered, wearing clean clothes that Thomas had provided, simple flannel and denim that somehow suited them better than the tactical gear they'd worn as Victor's lieutenants. Their faces brightened when they saw her, relief and love flowing through the bond. "You're awake," Gabriel said, moving immediately to her side, his hand settling warm and reassuring on her shoulder. Marcus took the seat beside her, close enough that their legs touched beneath the table. "How are you feeling?" "Confused," she admitted. "Overwhelmed, but also stronger somehow, like parts of me that were dormant are waking up." "The bond will continue to strengthen over the next few days," Thomas said. "Your bodies and wolves are still adjusting to the connection. It's particularly powerful in your case because of what you are." "And what exactly am I?" Morgan asked, frustration edging her voice. "Everyone keeps talking about prophecies and crimson lunas and destiny, but no one's actually explaining what any of it means." The 3 men exchanged glances. It was Gabriel who finally spoke, his strategic mind clearly organizing the complex information into something coherent. "The history we've been taught in the packs is incomplete," he began carefully. "Deliberately so. The Blackthorns and other dominant alpha lines have been suppressing certain knowledge for generations, specifically knowledge about Luna power and its true potential. Most wolves believe Lunas are rare but simple counterparts to alphas," Marcus continued. "Healers and peacekeepers who complement alpha strength, but that's only part of the truth. In the old days, before the modern pack system," Thomas added, "Lunas weren't subordinate to alphas. They were equal partners in leadership, providing balance. Alpha power is dominance, control, martial strength. Luna power is healing, protection, unity." Morgan frowned, processing this. "So, Victor rejected me because a true Luna would threaten his absolute authority?" "Partly," Gabriel agreed, "but there's more. The Crimson Luna is something different, a specific type of Luna that appears only once every 100 years. According to the old texts, Crimson Lunas can form multiple bonds, can call wolves across vast distances, can even challenge alpha bloodlines directly. And there's a prophecy," Marcus added softly, "dating back centuries, that speaks of a specific Crimson Luna, the 7th in a direct line, who would form a triad bond during the 7th blood moon of her 27th year and break what's called the chains of ancient tyranny. Morgan's coffee mug froze halfway to her lips. The 7th blood moon of my 27th year. That's tonight. This night that's just ending. Thomas nodded gravely. Now you understand why Victor was so desperate to stop the bond from forming. The Blackthorns have known about this prophecy for generations. Victor's father sensed your potential when you were born. That's why he arranged the accident that killed your parents. The mug slipped from Morgan's suddenly nerveless fingers, coffee splashing across the table. Neither Gabriel nor Marcus moved to clean it up, both frozen by the same shock that had paralyzed her. "What did you just say?" she whispered. "Your parents didn't die in a territorial dispute," Thomas said quietly. "That was the story Victor's father created. They were assassinated because they discovered what you were destined to become. Your mother found the old records, realized what the pattern of blood moons meant for her daughter. She and your father were planning to take you away, somewhere the Blackthorns couldn't find you. They died protecting you," Gabriel said softly, his hand tightening on her shoulder. Morgan sat in stunned silence, the revelation washing over her in waves of horror and grief. Her entire life had been built on a foundation of lies. Her designation, her parents' death, her rejection. All of it orchestrated by the Blackthorns to prevent a prophecy they feared. "Why?" she finally managed. "What tyranny? What are they so afraid of?" Thomas sighed heavily. "That's where Diana Steelheart comes in. She knows the full prophecy, the part that was removed from all Pack histories. She can explain what the Blackthorns have been hiding all these years, and why your triad bond represents such a threat to them." "Then we need to find her," Morgan said, resolve hardening her voice despite the emotional turmoil inside her. "Now." "It's not that simple," Thomas warned. "Diana lives in the Valley of Whispers, sacred ground protected by old magic. It's a 3-day journey from here, through territory patrolled by Victor's hunters. And after last night, he'll have every available wolf searching for you." "We don't have 3 days," Gabriel pointed out, his tactical mind already working the problem. "Victor will have contacted the High Council by now, reporting Morgan as a rogue Luna. Once they authorize a formal hunt, we'll be running from every pack in North America, not just Ironwood," Marcus finished grimly. "Then we leave immediately," Morgan decided, rising to her feet. The initial shock was receding, replaced by a determination that burned cold and clear. "Thomas, we need supplies, weapons, whatever you can spare." "You're not ready," Thomas protested. "The bond is still new. You haven't learned to use your Luna powers properly. If Victor's hunters find you, they will find us eventually," she cut him off. "Whether we're ready or not, better to move now while he's still regrouping than wait until he has an army at his back." Gabriel and Marcus stood with her, their support flowing through the bond. Thomas looked between the three of them and shook his head in resignation. "Just like your grandmother," he muttered. "Stubborn as hell when your mind's made up." He rose and moved to a cabinet against the far wall. "I'll pack you supplies, but you can't go alone. You don't know the way, and the valley is protected by illusions that will lead you in circles without a guide." "You're coming with us?" Marcus asked, surprise evident in his voice. "No," Thomas replied, pulling backpacks and gear from the cabinet. "I'm too well known in these mountains. Victor's hunters would spot me immediately." He paused, considering. "But there's someone else, one of our best scouts. She knows the hidden paths, can get you to Diana faster than the main routes." "Can we trust her?" Gabriel asked, ever the strategist. Thomas smiled grimly. "With your lives, because Victor took hers." At their questioning looks, he elaborated. "Catherine Pierce, former Army Ranger, best tracker in 3 territories. Her mate was executed 2 years ago for questioning Victor's authority. She's been working with the Resistance ever since, waiting for a chance to strike back." "Where do we find her?" Morgan asked. "You don't. She finds you." Thomas handed each of them a packed backpack, surprisingly heavy with supplies. "Head north through Griffin Pass. Make camp at the old ranger station by nightfall. She'll locate you there." Morgan shouldered her pack, feeling the weight of both the physical burden and the revelations that had been heaped upon her in the past few hours. Her parents murdered, her designation hidden, a prophecy hanging over her head. And somewhere in the mountains ahead, an ancient alpha with answers she desperately needed. "Thomas," she said as they prepared to leave, "what happens if we reach Diana? If I learn whatever truth the Blackthorns have been hiding?" The old healer's face grew solemn. "Then you face a choice, Morgan Silverbane, the same choice your grandmother faced. Stand and fight for what Luna power was always meant to be, or run and hide from a destiny that will find you regardless." "No one said anything about running," Marcus growled, his protective instincts flaring. "We've done enough of that already," Gabriel agreed, his usual analytical calm underlaid with steel. Morgan looked between her mates, feeling their absolute commitment through the bond. Then she turned back to Thomas. "When we reach Diana, when I know the truth, Victor Blackthorn will answer for everything he's done. To me, to my parents, to my mates." Her voice rang with a quiet authority that surprised even her. "That's not prophecy. That's promise." Thomas bowed his head slightly, respect evident in his posture. "Then may the moon goddess light your path, Crimson Luna, because the road ahead is darker than you know." They left as dawn fully broke over the mountains, 3 figures moving silently through snow-laden forests. Behind them lay the shattered remains of the lives they'd known, Morgan's exile, Gabriel and Marcus's service to a corrupt alpha. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the weight of a prophecy none of them fully understood. But between them ran golden threads of connection, growing stronger with each passing hour. Whatever came, they would face it together, as one. The journey through Griffin Pass proved more treacherous than they'd anticipated. What began as a clear, cold day soon deteriorated as storm clouds gathered over the mountains, bringing with them howling winds and snow so thick it reduced visibility to mere feet. Without the triad bond guiding them, they might have become separated a dozen times over. "This isn't natural," Gabriel shouted over the wind as they trudged through snow that had quickly deepened to mid-calf. "Storm blew in too fast, too targeted." "Victor?" Morgan called back, her face half buried in the scarf Thomas had provided. Marcus, taking point, turned back with a grim expression. "Weather manipulation, old alpha magic. Costs the user but effective for hunting. Drives prey to ground where they can be cornered." Morgan felt her heart sink. Even in her exile, there were stories of alphas who could influence natural elements, drawing on ancient connections to the land itself. It was rare, depleting, and typically reserved for dire circumstances. That Victor would expend such power to hunt them showed just how desperate he was to prevent them from reaching Diana Steelheart. "We need shelter," Gabriel called, his tactical mind assessing their increasingly dangerous situation. "Can't make the ranger station in this. We'll freeze before we're halfway there." Through the bond, Morgan felt his concern, not for himself, but for her. Despite her newfound Luna status, she'd spent 6 months living as an Omega with limited resources. Her body wasn't conditioned for this kind of physical ordeal, especially so soon after the energetic drain of completing the bond. She wanted to protest, to prove she wasn't weak, but the truth was her limbs were growing heavy, her thoughts sluggish. The cold was seeping into her bones despite the quality gear Thomas had provided. "There's a hunting blind about a quarter-mile east," Marcus said, pointing toward what appeared to be an unbroken wall of white. "Used it last spring during territory patrols. Basic, but enough to get out of the wind." They altered course, trusting Marcus's instincts and memory. Morgan found herself automatically falling into formation between her mates, Gabriel slightly behind, watching their backs, Marcus leading, breaking trail through the deepening snow. The bond made their coordination seamless, a dance they'd never rehearsed but performed perfectly. The hunting blind proved to be little more than a crude wooden structure built into the side of a rock formation. 3 walls and a roof, open on one side but positioned to block the prevailing wind. It wasn't warm, but it was shelter from the relentless snow and wind that had dogged their steps since mid-morning. Marcus immediately set about creating a small, smokeless fire using supplies from his pack, while Gabriel secured the entrance, arranging branches and snow to provide additional protection without completely blocking their escape route if needed. Both moved with the practiced efficiency of men who'd spent years in the field, surviving in harsh conditions. Morgan felt momentarily useless, uncertain of her role in this well-oiled machine. Then Gabriel turned to her, gesturing toward the center of the small space where Marcus had the fire crackling to life. "Core temperature," he said simply. "You need to warm up first. We can feel it through the bond. You're closer to hypothermia than we are." She wanted to argue, but knew he was right. Her fingers and toes had gone from painful to disturbingly numb, and the shivering that had racked her body for the past hour was beginning to subside. A dangerous sign. So she settled beside the small fire, holding her hands toward its meager warmth. Marcus and Gabriel finished their tasks and joined her, arranging themselves on either side, their bodies forming a protective cocoon against the cold. Through the bond, she felt their wolves pushing warmth toward her, a sharing of energy that seemed instinctive rather than conscious. "Victor won't be able to maintain the storm for long," Gabriel said, breaking the silence. "Weather manipulation drains alpha power quickly. He's likely hoping to pin us down until his hunters can reach us." "How far behind do you think they are?" Morgan asked, her voice steadier now as warmth began to return to her limbs. 6 hours, maybe less," Marcus estimated grimly. "Elite hunters can move faster than we can, especially in these conditions. They'll be traveling light, focused only on the pursuit." "Then we can't stay here," she concluded. "We need to keep moving as soon as the storm breaks." "No," both men said simultaneously. Gabriel continued, his voice gentle but firm. "Morgan, you're exhausted. We can all feel it. You need rest, proper rest, not just a few minutes by a fire. The Luna power you're manifesting is consuming energy at a rate your body hasn't adjusted to yet." "We're still half a day from the ranger station," Marcus added. "Better to rest now. Move after dark when the hunters will be forced to slow down. We have better night vision, especially with the triad bond amplifying our senses." She wanted to protest, but couldn't argue with their logic. Her body felt like lead, her eyelids impossibly heavy now that she'd stopped moving. The warmth from the fire and her mates was lulling her toward sleep, despite her determination to press on. "A few hours," she conceded reluctantly. "But we move at dusk, storm or no storm." "Agreed," Gabriel said, pulling an emergency blanket from his pack and wrapping it around all three of them, creating a pocket of shared warmth. "I'll take first watch. Both of you rest." Morgan wanted to argue that she should take a watch rotation too, but exhaustion was claiming her rapidly. The last thing she registered before sleep took her was Marcus's arm wrapping protectively around her waist, his solid presence a bulwark against both the cold and the fears that had plagued her since they'd left Thomas's cabin. She dreamed again, but not of her grandmother this time. Instead, she found herself standing in a vast, circular chamber carved from living stone. Torches flickered in wall sconces, illuminating symbols and runes etched into the rock, patterns that echoed the Luna markings on her skin. In the center of the chamber stood a woman Morgan had never seen before, tall and regal despite her advanced age, with silver hair worn in a complex braid and eyes that held the wisdom of decades. She wore leather and furs that spoke of a different era, a time before synthetic fabrics and modern conveniences. "Diana Steelheart," Morgan said, somehow knowing with absolute certainty who this woman was. The elderly Alpha inclined her head slightly. "Luna Silverbane, or should I say Crimson Luna. I've been waiting for you to sleep deeply enough that I could reach you through the dream paths." "This isn't just a dream," Morgan realized. "No, it's a meeting of minds across distance, an old skill few remember now." Diana's piercing gaze assessed her. "You've completed the triad bond. Good. But you're still weak, still learning. And Victor's hunters are closing in." "We're trying to reach you." "I know. But you won't make it, not on the path you're following. Victor has deployed his entire hunting corps. They've split into 3 groups to cover all possible approaches to the valley." Morgan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm outside. "Then how do we reach you?" "There is another way, one not found on any map." Diana moved to the chamber wall and touched one of the runes, a complex spiral pattern that glowed blue beneath her fingers. The moon path, an ancient route used by Lunas during times of persecution. It will lead you directly to the Valley of Whispers, bypassing Victor's hunters entirely. Where do we find it? Beneath Griffin Falls, there is a cave hidden behind the waterfall. Look for the stone marked with this symbol. Diana traced the spiral pattern again. The moon path begins there, but be warned, it's not without its own dangers. The path was created to allow passage only to those with Luna blood. Your mates will suffer pain while traveling it, the severity depending on the strength of your bond. Morgan frowned. I won't put them through that. We'll find another way. Diana's expression hardened. There is no other way, child. Not if you wish to reach me alive. Victor is not merely hunting you, he's racing against time. In 3 days, the Council of Alphas convenes for their quarterly gathering. He intends to denounce you as a rogue Luna, to secure their authorization for execution before you can learn the truth about your heritage. What truth? Everyone keeps talking about some great revelation, but no one will simply tell me what it is. Because knowledge without context is dangerous, Diana said firmly. What you need to understand can't be explained in a dream conversation. You need to see the evidence with your own eyes, touch the artifacts with your own hands. Otherwise, you'll dismiss it as fantasy or manipulation. Morgan sighed in frustration. At least tell me why the Blackthorns are so determined to stop me. What does this prophecy really mean for them? Diana studied her for a long moment, then nodded slightly, as if coming to a decision. The chains of ancient tyranny mentioned in the prophecy refer to a blood curse, a magical binding placed on Luna bloodlines centuries ago by the first Blackthorn Alpha. It limits Luna power, prevents its full expression, keeps Lunas subordinate to Alphas. Your triad bond has already begun weakening that curse. If you reach the Valley of Whispers, if you complete the ritual hidden there, you won't just break the curse for yourself. You'll break it for every Luna alive and every Luna yet to be born. The implications staggered Morgan. That would completely upend the pack hierarchy. The power balance between Alphas and Lunas would be restored to its natural state, Diana finished. As it was meant to be from the beginning, equal partners, different but complementary powers, creating balance rather than dominance. And Victor knows all this? He knows enough to fear it. His father made sure of that. Diana's form began to waver, the dream connection weakening. Find the moon path, Morgan Silverbane. Bring your mates. Reach the valley. The future of all werewolf kind depends on it. Wait! How will we survive the moon path if it causes them pain? But Diana was already fading, her voice becoming distant. Trust the bond. It's stronger than you know. The true power of a triad is not what it gives to the Luna, but what it allows the Luna to give to others. The dream dissolved, and Morgan jerked awake with a gasp. Both Gabriel and Marcus were instantly alert, their wolves responding to her distress through the bond. What is it? Gabriel asked, his eyes scanning the hunting blind for threats. What did you see? Marcus demanded simultaneously. Morgan stared at them, momentarily disoriented by the transition from dream to reality. How did you know I saw something? Your wolf was reaching for ours even in sleep, Gabriel explained. We felt your alarm. The bond is getting stronger, Marcus added, more integrated. Morgan quickly relayed her dream conversation with Diana, watching their expressions shift from concern to calculation to determination. The moon path, Gabriel mused when she'd finished. I've heard rumors, but always dismissed them as legend. A secret route only Lunas could access. If it means avoiding Victor's hunters, it's worth the risk, Marcus said firmly. But Diana said you'd both be in pain, Morgan protested, that the path was designed for Luna blood only. Pain is temporary, Marcus dismissed the concern with a shrug. Capture by Victor's hunters would be permanent. Besides, Gabriel added, his analytical mind already working the problem, if the path's effects are tied to the bond, we may have an advantage. The triad connection is unusually strong, according to Thomas. That might mitigate the worst effects. Morgan looked between them, these men who had already endured silver poisoning and alpha rejection for her, who were now willing to face unknown magical pain simply to help her reach her destination. "I don't deserve you," she said softly. "You do," Marcus countered immediately, his hand finding hers. "You absolutely do. And more importantly," Gabriel added, his fingers intertwining with her free hand, "we deserve you. After failing you once, we won't fail you again. Whatever this moon path holds, we face it together." Outside, the storm was beginning to subside, as if Victor's power to maintain it was indeed waning. Through the gaps in their makeshift shelter, Morgan could see that dusk was approaching, the dim winter light fading toward darkness. "Time to move," she said, drawing strength from their unwavering support. "Griffin Falls is about 4 miles northeast from here. If we push, we can reach it before full dark." They packed quickly and efficiently, leaving no trace of their presence in the hunting blind. The snow had stopped completely by the time they emerged, though a heavy blanket of white covered the landscape, transforming the familiar forest into something alien and new. As they set off toward Griffin Falls, Morgan felt a strange sensation through the bond, a subtle pulling, like a compass needle seeking north. Her wolf seemed to know which way to go, even when the terrain and snow cover obscured the usual landmarks. She took the lead instinctively, Gabriel and Marcus falling in behind her without question. The forest was eerily silent as they traveled, no birds calling, no small creatures moving in the underbrush. Even the wind had died, leaving a stillness that felt expectant, as if the land itself was holding its breath. "They're out there," Marcus said quietly, after they'd been walking for perhaps an hour. "I can sense them." "How many?" Gabriel asked, his voice equally low. "At least 12, moving in formation, trying to cut us off from the falls." Morgan felt it too now, a prickling awareness of multiple wolves moving through the forest, their intent hostile. Victor's hunters had found their trail despite the storm, and they were closing in. "We need to move faster," she urged, increasing her pace despite the treacherous footing. They pushed forward through deepening shadows as night began to fall, their progress hampered by the need to move silently, to leave as little trail as possible. Through the bond, Morgan felt Gabriel mapping alternative routes, calculating their chances of reaching the falls before the hunters intercepted them. The odds weren't good. The first howl split the night when they were perhaps a mile from their destination, a long, eerie call that was answered immediately by others, forming a communication network that surrounded them on 3 sides. "They're coordinating," Gabriel said grimly, closing the net. A flash of movement to their right, a gray wolf darting between trees, moving fast and low to the ground. Marcus reacted instantly, pulling Morgan behind him as Gabriel pivoted to watch their rear. "We're out of time," Marcus growled, his eyes glowing gold as his wolf rose to the surface. "They've found us." More movement in the trees around them, shadows separating from darkness, taking form as wolves emerged from cover. Large, powerful creatures with eyes that gleamed like cold stars in the gathering night. Victor's elite hunters, trained killers who had never failed to bring down their prey. Morgan counted 8 visible wolves, with more certainly hiding just out of sight. They were surrounded, outnumbered, caught in open ground with no defensible position. The largest wolf stepped forward, a massive silver-gray male with battle scars crisscrossing his muzzle. He shifted smoothly into human form, revealing a muscular man in his 40s, with the same silver-gray hair and cold eyes. "Marcus, Gabriel." His voice was rough, as if his vocal cords hadn't quite completed the transition from wolf to human. "Alpha Blackthorn is prepared to be merciful. Surrender the Omega, return to the pack, swear renewed blood oaths, and he'll let you live." "She's not an Omega," Gabriel replied evenly. "She's Luna, and she's our mate." "And we're not coming back," Marcus added, his stance widening as he prepared for combat. The hunter sighed, as if genuinely regretful. "Then you leave us no choice." He raised his hand, about to give the signal for his wolves to attack. Morgan felt something ancient and powerful rising within her. Luna instinct, merging with human desperation. She stepped forward, pushing past her protective mates, despite their attempts to keep her behind them. "Wait!" she commanded, and was shocked when her voice rang with power that made every wolf in the clearing freeze. "I don't know your name, Hunter." The man looked startled at being directly addressed, as if no prey had ever spoken to him before. Lawrence Kincaid." "Lawrence Kincaid," Morgan repeated, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I, Morgan Silverbane, Luna of the Northern Territories, invoke the right of challenge under the old laws." Silence fell over the forest clearing. Morgan's words seemed to hang in the frigid air, crystallizing like her breath in the moonlight. The hunters exchanged uncertain glances, clearly caught off guard by the invocation of laws so ancient many had forgotten they existed. Lawrence Kincaid's eyes narrowed, calculation replacing the cold certainty that had been there moments before. "The right of challenge died with the old ways," he said, but his tone lacked conviction. "The old laws never died," Morgan countered, feeling knowledge rise within her that she hadn't known she possessed, ancestral memories awakening through the Luna blood in her veins. They were merely buried by those who found them inconvenient. Through the bond, she felt Gabriel and Marcus's surprise and concern, but also their unwavering support. They stood slightly behind her now, flanking rather than shielding, acknowledging her position as Luna even as they remained ready to defend her with their lives. Even if the right of challenge still existed, Lawrence argued, it would require the presence of a council witness. There is none here. An unexpected voice came from the darkness beyond the circle of hunters. "There is." The wolves parted as a figure emerged from the shadows. A woman in her 90s, her back straight despite her advanced years, her silver hair braided with intricate care, her eyes sharp and knowing. She carried a wooden staff carved with symbols that matched the Luna markings on Morgan's skin, and she moved with the quiet confidence of one who had nothing left to fear. "Diana Steelheart," Lawrence breathed, shock evident in his voice. The hunters around him shifted uneasily, some lowering themselves in instinctive deference to an alpha whose lineage predated even the Blackthorns. "You know me, Lawrence Kincaid," Diana acknowledged, with a slight nod. "Son of William, grandson of James. Your bloodline has served the hunter corps for 5 generations, honorably until now." Lawrence's jaw tightened. "I serve the Alpha of Ironwood Pack, as sworn by blood oath. And yet here you stand, ready to violate one of our oldest traditions." Diana moved to Morgan's side, her presence radiating a calm authority that made even the battle-hardened hunters take a step back. "The right of challenge has been invoked by a Luna with a completed triad bond. By the old laws, you are bound to honor it." The hunters looked to Lawrence, uncertainty clear on their faces. He hesitated, visibly torn between his orders from Victor and laws so deeply ingrained in werewolf society that even centuries of suppression hadn't completely erased them. "What form of challenge?" he finally asked, conceding to tradition despite his obvious reluctance. "Wisdom," Morgan answered without hesitation, naming the form of challenge Diana had described in her dream. "Let the gathered wolves hear both sides and choose their own path, as it was in the beginning." Lawrence's shoulders relaxed slightly. Victor had undoubtedly prepared him for a physical confrontation, not a battle of ideals. And what exactly would this wisdom challenge entail? Diana planted her staff in the snow, its ancient wood somehow remaining upright without support. "Morgan Silverbane will present her vision for what Pack could be. You, as Victor's representative, will defend the current order. When both have spoken, every wolf present will make their choice, freely, without coercion or command." Her gaze swept the clearing. "And by the old laws, that choice must be honored, regardless of blood oaths or prior allegiance." The hunters shifted uneasily, exchanging glances. One of them, a younger female with alert eyes, stepped forward slightly. "Is that true? We can choose without breaking our oaths?" "The old laws predate blood oaths," Diana confirmed. "They are written in the earth itself, in the bond between wolf and moon. No alpha, regardless of lineage or power, can override them when properly invoked. Morgan felt Gabriel's mind working rapidly through the bond, analyzing the situation from every angle. This could work. He communicated silently to her and Marcus. If enough hunters choose to stand with us, Victor loses his ability to pursue us effectively. And it buys us time to reach the valley, Marcus added mentally, his warrior's instinct recognizing the strategic advantage. Lawrence consulted quietly with several senior hunters before turning back to Morgan. "We accept your challenge, Luna Silverbane. Speak your truth, and we will listen. But know this. Victor Blackthorn has led Ironwood Pack to strength and prosperity for decades. His ways have proven effective. Your untested ideals will not easily sway those who have benefited from his leadership." Morgan felt a moment of doubt. What did she know about leadership? 6 months ago, she'd been an exiled Omega living hand-to-mouth in a leaking cabin. Before that, she'd been a low-ranking wolf with no voice in pack matters. What vision could she possibly offer that would convince hardened warriors to abandon their alpha? Through the bond came waves of confidence, Gabriel and Marcus pouring their belief in her through the connection, steadying her, reminding her of who and what she truly was. Not just an Omega, pretending to be Luna, but Crimson Luna, 7th of her line, destined to restore balance to a system long corrupted. "The moon offers enough light," Diana announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the clearing. "Form the circle, as it was done in the elder days." To Morgan's surprise, the hunters complied without argument, arranging themselves in a rough circle with Diana's staff marking the center. Lawrence took his position opposite Morgan, his expression guarded but not openly hostile. Gabriel and Marcus stood slightly behind her, their presence a tangible support. Lawrence Kincaid speaks first, defending the order established by Alpha Victor Blackthorn, Diana declared, completing the ritual with words that sounded ancient and practiced. Then Luna Morgan Silverbane will present her vision. When both have spoken, each wolf will choose. So it was in the beginning. So shall it be now. Lawrence stepped into the circle, his military bearing evident in his precise movements. He addressed the gathered hunters directly, his voice confident and commanding. "For 6 generations, the Blackthorn line has led Ironwood Pack from strength to strength. Under Victor's leadership, our territory has expanded by 20%. Our numbers have grown. Our standing among the Council of Alphas has never been higher. We have peace with neighboring packs, prosperity for our members, and a clear hierarchy that provides structure and purpose for every wolf according to their abilities." He gestured toward Morgan with a dismissive flick of his hand. "Now comes this untested female, claiming Luna status without formal recognition, bonded to 2 betas who broke sacred blood oaths, invoking laws so old most of us learned of them only through grandparents' tales. She offers you what? Uncertainty, chaos, the dismantling of a system that has served us well for centuries." His eyes swept the circle, making direct contact with each hunter in turn. "Victor Blackthorn is a proven leader. He has shed blood for this pack, made hard decisions when necessary, maintained order through challenge and change. He deserves your continued loyalty, not because he demands it, but because he has earned it through results that benefit every wolf under his protection." Lawrence stepped back, his piece spoken. The hunters remained silent, their expressions thoughtful but unreadable. Through the bond, Morgan felt Gabriel analyzing the speech, noting its emphasis on practical benefits rather than emotional loyalty, its appeal to self-interest rather than higher purpose. Diana nodded gravely. "Luna Morgan Silverbane, the circle awaits your words." Morgan took a deep breath and stepped forward, feeling the weight of ancestral memory pressing against her consciousness. Words rose within her that seemed to come from beyond her own experience, wisdom passed down through Luna bloodlines, preserved despite generations of suppression. "What Lawrence says is true," she began, surprising everyone with her acknowledgement. "The Blackthorn line has created a pack that is strong, prosperous, expanding. But I ask you this, strong for whom? Prosperous for whom? Expanding at what cost? She moved slowly around the inner edge of the circle, making eye contact with each hunter as Lawrence had done, but with a different quality of connection, not commanding, but inviting, not imposing, but revealing. In the Ironwood hierarchy, alphas rule through dominance, through fear, through control. This system benefits those at the top, the pure-blooded, the physically powerful, those born to certain bloodlines or designations. But what of the rest? The betas who serve without recognition, the gammas who labor without voice, the omegas who exist as little more than servants. Several hunters shifted uncomfortably, their expressions suggesting her words had struck a nerve. Morgan continued, her confidence growing with each step. I lived as an omega until 6 months ago. I know what it means to be regarded as worthless, to have your contributions dismissed, your suffering ignored. Then I discovered I was Luna, a truth Victor Blackthorne had known since my birth, a truth he deliberately concealed, because Luna power threatens alpha dominance. She paused, letting that revelation sink in. The Blackthorns and other dominant alpha lines have been suppressing certain knowledge for generations, specifically knowledge about Luna power and its true potential. In the old days, before the modern pack system, Lunas weren't subordinate to alphas. They were equal partners in leadership, providing balance. Alpha power is dominance, control, martial strength. Luna power is healing, protection, unity. A murmur ran through the gathered wolves. Even Lawrence looked troubled, as if hearing something that resonated despite his loyalty to Victor. The system Victor maintains isn't the natural order. It's an artificial hierarchy created through centuries of suppression, of burying old knowledge, of eliminating those who remembered how things used to be. Morgan's voice strengthened as she spoke, carrying to every corner of the clearing without effort. My grandmother was the last Luna of the Northern Territories before she was forced into exile. My parents were murdered, yes, murdered, not killed in a territorial dispute, because they discovered what I was destined to become. Gasps and whispers broke out among the hunters. Lawrence started to object, but Diana raised her hand, silencing him with a look. Let her speak. The challenge gives her that right. Morgan continued, her heart pounding but her voice steady. The pack Victor has built looks strong from the outside, but examine it closely and you'll see the cracks. Wolves who disappear for questioning authority. Blood oaths forced on young betas before they're old enough to understand the consequences. Resources concentrated among those who pledge absolute loyalty while others struggle. Fear used as a tool of control. She returned to her original position, completing the circle. I offer a different vision, a pack built on choice rather than compulsion, on balance rather than domination, where alpha and Luna powers work in harmony, complementing rather than competing, where a wolf's worth is measured by their contribution, not their designation or bloodline. Morgan gestured to Gabriel and Marcus, inviting them to stand beside her. Our triad bond represents what pack could be. 3 individuals with different strengths, different perspectives, united by choice and commitment, rather than hierarchy and fear. Gabriel's strategic mind, Marcus's protective strength, my Luna healing, each valuable, each necessary, none dominant over the others. Her gaze swept the circle, meeting each hunter's eyes in turn. I don't ask you to follow me because of ancient prophecy or Luna power. I ask you to consider a simple question. Do you serve Ironwood Pack out of fear or out of love? Do you follow Victor Blackthorne because you believe in his vision or because you fear the consequences of disobedience? And which foundation builds a stronger pack, willing loyalty or enforced submission? Morgan stepped back, her piece spoken. The clearing fell silent, save for the soft whisper of wind through pine boughs and the distant cry of a nightbird. Through the bond, she felt Gabriel and Marcus's pride and support flowing into her, bolstering her as she awaited the hunter's response. Diana stepped forward once more, her ancient eyes moving from Morgan to Lawrence and back again. Both have spoken their truth. Now, as the old laws demand, each wolf must choose, without coercion, without fear of reprisal. She planted her staff more firmly in the snow-covered ground. "Step to the side of the one whose vision you would follow. So it was in the beginning, so shall it be now." For several heartbeats, no one moved. The hunters looked at one another, uncertainty and conflict clear on their faces. Lawrence stood tall and confident, clearly expecting his wolves to maintain their loyalty to Victor. Morgan waited, trying to project a calm she didn't entirely feel, wondering if her words had reached anyone at all. Then, to everyone's surprise, the young female hunter who had questioned Diana earlier stepped deliberately across the circle to stand beside Morgan. Her expression was a mixture of fear and determination, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "My younger sister was designated Omega at birth. Under Victor's leadership, she's been denied training, education, opportunity, treated as less than wolf. What Luna Silverbane describes, I want that for her, for all of us." A shocked silence followed her declaration. Then, like a dam breaking, others began to move. Not all. Many remained with Lawrence, their expressions sympathetic but their loyalty to Victor too ingrained to break. But one by one, nearly half the hunting party crossed to Morgan's side of the circle. Lawrence watched with growing dismay as his force split before his eyes. When the movement finally ceased, 8 hunters remained with him while 7 had chosen to stand with Morgan. His face hardened with anger and betrayal. "You break your oaths," he growled at those who had joined Morgan. "Victor will not forget this treachery." "No oaths are broken," Diana corrected firmly. "The choice made under the right of challenge supersedes all other bonds. These wolves have chosen freely, as is their right under laws older than the Blackthorn line itself." Her ancient eyes fixed on Lawrence with unmistakable authority. "By the old laws, you are bound to respect their choice and allow Luna Silverbane and her followers safe passage." Lawrence's jaw clenched, his struggle visible as he balanced his orders from Victor against traditions so deeply woven into werewolf society that violating them would mark him as outcast among his own kind. Finally, he gave a short, sharp nod. "I will honor the old laws," he said stiffly. "You have until dawn to leave Ironwood territory unchallenged. After that, the truce ends." His gaze hardened as it fell on the hunters who had chosen Morgan. "And you would do well to be far away when Victor learns of your choice." Without waiting for a response, he signaled to his remaining hunters and melted into the forest, disappearing among the shadows with the silent efficiency that had made them legendary among packs. Within moments, only Morgan's group remained in the clearing with Diana. The elderly Alpha turned to Morgan with a satisfied gleam in her eye. "Well done, Luna Silverbane. You've just taken your first steps toward fulfilling the prophecy." "I didn't expect any of them to choose me," Morgan admitted, still stunned by the outcome. "Truth has power," Diana replied simply, "especially when spoken by one who carries Luna blood." She surveyed the 7 hunters who now stood awkwardly with their new Luna. "You understand what you've done by choosing her path? Victor will consider you renegades, traitors. There can be no return to Ironwood under his leadership." The young female hunter stepped forward again, apparently having assumed an unofficial position as spokesperson. "We understand, but after hearing both sides—" She hesitated, then finished with quiet certainty. "Some choices are worth the cost." Diana nodded approvingly. "What is your name, young one?" "Maya Pierce." She straightened slightly. "Catherine Pierce was my mother." Recognition flashed in Gabriel's eyes. "Thomas's contact, the scout who was supposed to find us at the ranger station." Maya smiled slightly. "I was already watching when Victor's storm hit. I reported your position to the resistance, and Diana insisted on coming personally despite the risk." Her expression sobered. "But Lawrence was tracking you too. We barely got here ahead of his hunting party." "And now we need to move," Diana said briskly. "Dawn isn't far off, and Lawrence is an honorable wolf, but he's also Victor's man. The moment the truce expires, he'll be on our trail again." She turned to Morgan. "The moon path awaits, Crimson Luna. Now with your triad and these new followers, you have the beginnings of a true pack. The path will recognize that bond." Morgan looked at the diverse group now gathered around her. Gabriel and Marcus, her mates and partners, Maya and the other hunters who had risked everything to follow her vision, and Diana Steelheart, living linked to the old ways. A feeling rose within her that she hadn't experienced since before her exile: belonging, community, pack. Then let's not waste any more time, she decided, her voice carrying the quiet authority of Luna power. Lead the way to the moon path, Diana. It's time to learn the truth about my heritage. Diana led them through the dark forest with the sure-footed confidence of one who had walked these paths for decades. Despite her advanced age, she moved with surprising speed and agility, forcing the younger wolves to extend themselves to keep pace. Morgan felt her respect for the ancient alpha growing with each mile they covered. "How much farther to Griffin Falls?" Marcus asked, after they had been traveling for nearly an hour. "We're not going to Griffin Falls," Diana replied, her breath creating plumes of white in the cold night air. "That was a contingency plan, one Victor's hunters would expect us to take. The moon path has multiple access points for those who know where to look." She pointed ahead to where the terrain began to rise. "There's a sacred spring in the foothills, water that has flowed continuously for 10,000 years, never freezing even in the deepest winter. The oldest moon path entrance lies beneath it." They climbed steadily for another hour, the forest gradually thinning as they ascended. The ground beneath their feet changed from snow-covered loam to increasingly rocky terrain, forcing them to pick their way carefully in the dim moonlight. Despite the challenging conditions, Morgan felt a growing sense of anticipation, of rightness, as if every step was bringing her closer to something her soul had been seeking all her life. Finally, Diana led them into a small, sheltered hollow where a pool of water gleamed silver in the moonlight. Steam rose gently from its surface, creating an otherworldly mist that hung in the still air. Ancient stones surrounded the pool, each carved with symbols similar to the Luna markings Morgan now bore on her skin. "The moon spring," Diana announced, her voice dropping to a reverent whisper. "Sacred to Luna kind since before humans walked these lands. Its waters flow directly from the Earth's heart, carrying magic older than any pack or bloodline." Morgan approached the pool slowly, drawn by an instinct she couldn't name. The steam carried a mineral scent that was somehow familiar, though she was certain she had never visited this place before. When she reached the edge, she gasped softly at what she saw. The water was crystal clear despite its silver sheen, and at the bottom of the pool, a circular stone door was clearly visible, marked with the spiral symbol Diana had shown her in the dream. "The moon path entrance," she breathed. Diana nodded. "One of 13 scattered throughout the Northern Territories. This is the oldest and the most direct route to the Valley of Whispers." "How do we open it?" Gabriel asked, the strategist in him already analyzing the problem. "Luna blood freely given," Diana replied. She turned to Morgan. "A drop of your blood in the water will unlock the path, but only if offered with clear intent. The old magic requires certainty of purpose." Morgan glanced at Gabriel and Marcus, remembering Diana's warning about the path causing them pain. "You're sure you want to do this? Diana said the moon path wasn't designed for non-Luna blood." Marcus's expression was resolute. "We've come too far to turn back now." "Whatever pain the path brings," Gabriel added, "it's worth it to keep you safe and discover the truth." The bond hummed with their determination, their absolute commitment to standing beside her regardless of the cost. Morgan felt humbled by their loyalty, especially knowing they had hesitated once before at her spring awakening. There was no hesitation in them now, only unwavering support and a love so fierce it took her breath away. "What about the others?" She looked at Maya and the hunters who had chosen to follow her. "The path will affect them too." "We made our choice knowing the risks," Maya said quietly, the other hunters nodding in agreement. "We'll endure whatever comes." Morgan turned back to the pool, resolve hardening within her. She knelt at the edge, drawing a small knife from her pack. Without hesitation, she pricked her finger and allowed a single drop of blood to fall into the water. I, Morgan Silverbane, Crimson Luna of the 7th lineage, seek passage to the Valley of Whispers. I come in search of truth, long hidden, carrying the hopes of those who follow me freely. Open the path to us, guardians of the old ways." The moment her blood touched the water, it began to glow. Not silver now, but gold, the same luminous gold as the Luna markings on her skin. The light spread outward from the point of contact, flowing like liquid fire through the entire pool. When it reached the stone door at the bottom, the spiral symbol blazed brilliantly, and slowly, silently, the door began to swing upward. Water drained from the pool with impossible speed, revealing a staircase hewn from living rock that spiraled downward into darkness. Golden light continued to pulse along the walls, illuminating the way forward. "The path is open," Diana announced, "but we must move quickly. It will remain accessible only until moonset, about 4 hours from now." Morgan stood, facing her small band of followers. Diana warned that the path will cause discomfort to anyone without Luna blood. "The closer your connection to me, the less pain you'll feel. But it will not be an easy journey. If any wish to remain behind, there is no shame in that choice." No one moved. Their expressions ranged from nervous to determined, but not a single wolf stepped back. "Then let us walk the moon path together," Morgan said, feeling a swell of pride in these wolves who had chosen to follow her vision despite the risks. "As a pack." She descended the stairs first, Gabriel and Marcus close behind her, then Maya and the other hunters, with Diana bringing up the rear. As they moved deeper beneath the earth, the air grew warmer rather than colder, carrying scents of mineral and magic that made their wolves stir restlessly beneath their human skins. The stairs ended in a tunnel that stretched away into darkness, its walls embedded with crystals that glowed with the same golden light that had filled the pool. The path was wide enough for 3 to walk abreast, and Morgan found herself naturally falling into step between Gabriel and Marcus, their shoulders occasionally brushing hers in silent reassurance. They had walked perhaps half a mile when the first effects of the path began to manifest. Marcus stumbled slightly, a sharp intake of breath revealing his discomfort. Through the bond, Morgan felt it, a burning sensation spreading through his limbs, as if his very blood was heating within his veins. Gabriel followed moments later, his usually analytical mind clouding with pain that he tried unsuccessfully to hide from her. Behind them came soft gasps and muffled groans as the other wolves felt the path's resistance to their presence. "It's the old magic," Diana explained from the rear, her voice strained but steady. "The path recognizes Luna blood and welcomes it. All others it tests, challenges." Morgan reached for her mate's hands, instinctively drawing them closer. Through the bond, she tried to absorb some of their discomfort, to share the burden as they had so often shared hers. To her surprise, it worked. Golden light flowed from her skin to theirs where they touched, visibly easing their pain. "The triad connection," Diana observed with approval. "It allows you to extend your Luna protection to them." Understanding bloomed in Morgan. She stopped, turning to face the hunters who followed, each showing varying degrees of distress as the path's magic worked against them. "Form a chain," she instructed. "Everyone hold hands. Let me try something." They complied without question, forming a human chain with Morgan at its head, still connected to Gabriel and Marcus. She closed her eyes, reaching for the Luna power that had manifested so dramatically during their escape from the cabin. It responded more readily now, rising within her like a warm tide, flowing outward through her hands to Gabriel and Marcus, then through them to Maya, and onward through the entire chain of wolves. Golden light spread from wolf to wolf, temporarily banishing the shadows in the tunnel. Morgan felt the connection forming, not the deep, intimate bond she shared with her mates, but something new, something she instinctively recognized as pack bonds. Tendrils of golden energy linking each wolf to her and to each other, creating a network of mutual support and belonging. The pain eased visibly in all of them. Their postures straightened, their breathing steadied, their eyes brightened with wonder as they felt the unusual connection forming between them. "Pack bonds," Diana whispered, sounding awed despite her centuries of experience. True pack bonds formed through choice rather than compulsion. I haven't seen their like in 70 years. Morgan felt the bonds strengthening, settling into place like puzzle pieces finding their proper fit. These weren't the artificial hierarchical structures of Victor's pack, but something older, more natural. Wolves connected to their Luna not through dominance, but through mutual choice and shared purpose. "We can continue now," she said, feeling a new confidence flowing through her. "The path will still test us, but we'll face it together." They resumed their journey, moving more swiftly now despite the path's resistance. The tunnel began to slope gently upward after another mile, suggesting they were beginning their ascent toward the Valley of Whispers. The golden crystals embedded in the walls grew larger and more numerous, illuminating their way with increasing brightness. After what seemed like hours of walking, they reached a massive circular chamber carved from the living rock of the mountain. Its ceiling soared overhead, embedded with crystals that mimicked the night sky, complete with a glowing representation of the moon in its various phases. The walls were covered in ancient murals depicting wolves in human and animal form, scenes of pack life from a time long before the modern hierarchy had been established. In the center of the chamber stood a raised dais of white stone, upon which rested a pedestal holding a large crystal sphere that pulsed with the same golden light as Morgan's Luna markings. "The heart chamber," Diana announced, her voice echoing in the vast space. "The crossroads of all moon paths and the gateway to the Valley of Whispers." Morgan approached the dais slowly, drawn by an instinct that felt as old as the chamber itself. As she neared the pedestal, the crystal sphere's pulsing increased in tempo, matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. When she stood directly before it, the light within the sphere coalesced into patterns identical to the Luna markings on her skin. "Touch it," Diana urged softly. "It's responding to your presence, recognizing the Crimson Luna bloodline." Morgan hesitated only briefly before placing her palms against the cool surface of the sphere. The moment she made contact, the chamber transformed around them. The murals on the walls seemed to come alive, shifting and flowing, as if telling their stories in real time. The crystal stars overhead blazed brighter, and the moon representation began to cycle rapidly through its phases. Through her hands, information poured into Morgan's consciousness, not as words or images, but as pure knowledge, absorbed directly into her mind and soul. The history of Luna power, its true nature and potential, the complementary relationship it was meant to have with alpha strength, the balance that had existed for millennia before being deliberately disrupted, and finally, the truth about the Blackthorns and their centuries-long suppression of Luna power. She saw it all with perfect clarity. How the first Blackthorn Alpha, fearing the influence Lunas held over pack members, had created a blood curse using forbidden magic. The curse had been designed to limit Luna power, to make Lunas dependent on Alpha protection, to prevent them from reaching their full potential. Generation after generation, the Blackthorns had maintained and strengthened the curse, eliminating any Luna who showed signs of breaking free from its constraints. Until now. Until her. The seventh Luna of her bloodline, born under the seventh blood moon, formed into a triad bond that the curse couldn't fully contain. Morgan drew her hands away from the sphere, gasping as the flow of knowledge ceased. The chamber returned to its previous state, though the crystal sphere continued to pulse with golden light. "Now you understand," Diana said quietly, "why Victor was so desperate to prevent your bond from forming. Why the Blackthorns have hunted Luna bloodlines for centuries. Why the prophecy terrifies them." Morgan nodded slowly, still processing the vast amount of information she had absorbed. "The curse. It affects all Lunas, doesn't it? Not just me." "Every Luna born since it was cast," Diana confirmed grimly, "limiting our powers, binding us to Alpha authority, preventing us from fulfilling our true purpose as balance to Alpha dominance." "And breaking the curse would free all Lunas," Gabriel said thoughtfully, having followed Morgan's revelations through their bond. "Not just those in our pack, but worldwide. It would completely upend the power structure Victor and others like him have maintained for generations, Marcus added, his warrior's mind immediately grasping the strategic implications. Morgan turned to face her small pack, her expression resolute. Then that's exactly what we need to do. Break the curse, restore the balance, give all Lunas the freedom to reach their full potential. It won't be simple, Diana warned. The ritual to break the curse requires specific conditions, a sacred place, particular celestial alignments, artifacts that have been scattered and hidden. But it can be done, Morgan pressed. Diana's ancient eyes gleamed with hope long deferred. Yes, with your triad bond, with true pack bonds forming among your followers, with the Crimson Luna power you're just beginning to manifest, it can be done. Then guide us to the Valley of Whispers, Morgan said, her voice carrying the quiet authority that seemed to come more naturally with each passing hour. Show us what we need to do. It's time to finish what my grandmother started. Diana led them to the far side of the chamber, where a large arch carved from white stone stood apart from the muraled walls. Unlike the entrance they had used, this doorway appeared to open into nothing but solid rock. The final threshold, Diana explained, the direct entrance to the Valley of Whispers. It will recognize you, Crimson Luna, and open to your touch. Morgan approached the arch, laying her palm against the keystone at its center. The stone warmed beneath her touch, and golden light traced the carved symbols that decorated the arch. A deep rumbling vibrated through the chamber as the solid rock within the archway simply dissolved, revealing a pathway bathed in early morning light. "How is it daylight?" Gabriel asked, puzzled. "We can't have been underground that long." "The moon path doesn't just traverse distance," Diana explained with a mysterious smile. "It moves through time as well. Not dramatically, but enough to ensure we arrive when needed rather than when expected. The valley is always at dawn when a Luna first enters it." Morgan stepped through the archway and found herself standing at the edge of a valley so beautiful it momentarily took her breath away. Mist clung to the lower reaches, but she could see sunlight illuminating the upper slopes of the surrounding mountains, their peaks dusted with snow that glowed rose gold in the dawn light. Ancient forests covered much of the terrain, interspersed with meadows already showing the first hints of spring, despite the winter that still gripped the lands outside. A river wound through the center of the valley, its waters sparkling silver blue in the growing light. And nestled against the far mountainside, partially obscured by the morning mist, stood structures that appeared to be buildings, a settlement of some kind. "Welcome to the Valley of Whispers," Diana said, coming to stand beside Morgan. "The last sanctuary of the old knowledge, hidden from Victor and his kind for generations." Gabriel and Marcus emerged next, followed by Maya and the other hunters. All stood in silent awe, absorbing the unexpected beauty of the hidden valley. "There are people living here?" Morgan asked, gesturing toward the distant structures. "Wolves," Diana corrected gently. "Descendants of those who refused to accept the Blackthorn's new order. Keepers of the old ways. They've maintained this sanctuary for centuries, waiting for the prophecy to manifest." Her weathered face softened with emotion. "Waiting for you, Crimson Luna?" As if summoned by her words, figures began to emerge from the mist near the settlement, moving swiftly up the path toward the moon path entrance. Within minutes, a delegation of perhaps 20 wolves had gathered at a respectful distance, watching the newcomers with expressions ranging from curiosity to reverence. One woman stepped forward from the group, tall and regal despite her 60 years, with silver-streaked dark hair worn in a complex braid and eyes that held both wisdom and wariness. She carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to leadership, though she wore simple clothing rather than the trappings of authority Morgan had associated with pack leaders. "Diana," the woman greeted the ancient Alpha with obvious respect. "We felt the moon path activate. The Sentinels reported multiple travelers." Her gaze shifted to Morgan, lingering on the Luna markings visible on her skin. "Is this?" "Yes, Eleanor," Diana confirmed with quiet satisfaction. "May I present Morgan Silverbane, Crimson Luna of the 7th lineage. She has completed the triad bond and begun forming true pack bonds. She gestured to the small group gathered behind Morgan. These are her mates and the first members of her pack. Eleanor Wintermoon studied Morgan intently, her expression unreadable. Then, to everyone's surprise, she knelt before the younger woman, bowing her head in a gesture of profound respect. "Luna Silverbane," she said formally, "the Valley of Whispers has awaited your coming for generations. I, Eleanor Wintermoon, former Luna of the Pacific Coast Pack, offer you welcome and sanctuary." She looked up, her eyes shining with emotion. "And my service, if you will have it." Morgan was momentarily speechless, uncomfortable with the deference from a woman who was clearly a powerful wolf in her own right. She stepped forward quickly, extending her hand to help Eleanor rise. "Please, there's no need for that," she said earnestly. "I'm still learning what it means to be Luna. If anything, I should be honoring you for maintaining this sanctuary, for keeping the old knowledge alive." Eleanor accepted Morgan's hand and rose, a smile warming her austere features. "Your grandmother said you would be like this, uncomfortable with ceremony, quick to value others' contributions." At Morgan's surprised look, she added, "Yes, I knew Elizabeth Silverbane. She spent her final years here in the valley, teaching what she knew, helping us prepare for the prophecy's fulfillment." "She died here?" Morgan asked softly. Eleanor nodded. Peacefully, surrounded by pack, secure in the knowledge that her granddaughter would one day complete what she had begun. She gestured toward the settlement. "Her dwelling has been maintained as she left it, awaiting your arrival." A surge of emotion threatened to overwhelm Morgan. Grief for the grandmother she had lost too soon, gratitude that Elizabeth had found sanctuary in her final years, awe at the legacy that had been preserved for her. Through the bond, she felt Gabriel and Marcus moving closer, lending her their strength as they so often did. "We have much to discuss," Eleanor continued, her tone becoming more businesslike. "The breaking of the Blackthorn curse requires preparation, and Victor will not remain ignorant of your location for long. Even the valley's protections have limits." "How soon can the ritual be performed?" Gabriel asked, his strategic mind already focusing on their next steps. 3 days, Eleanor replied. "The celestial alignment must be precise, the new moon following the 7th blood moon. That gives us time to prepare, but not much." "And Victor?" Marquez pressed, ever the protector. "How quickly can he mobilize against us?" Eleanor's expression darkened. "We have sentinels watching the outer boundaries. He's already gathered his remaining hunters and contacted neighboring packs for reinforcements. They're searching the mountains systematically, testing the old barriers that hide the valley." "Then we have work to do," Morgan said decisively, drawing strength from the pack bonds that had formed during their journey through the moon path. "We need to prepare for both the ritual and Victor's inevitable attack. Eleanor, I would value your guidance in understanding what needs to be done." "Of course, Luna Silverbane." Eleanor gestured toward the settlement. "Your grandmother's dwelling awaits, and the valley's resources are at your disposal. The Council of Elders will want to meet with you as well, to share what they know of the ritual requirements." As they began walking toward the settlement, Morgan found herself falling into step between Gabriel and Marcus, their presence a comforting constant in this strange new world she had entered. Through the bond, she sensed their thoughts, Gabriel already analyzing defensive positions and strategic considerations, Marcus evaluating potential threats and protective measures, both fully committed to supporting her in whatever lay ahead. Behind them came Maya and the hunters who had chosen to follow her vision, their newly formed pack bonds a gentle hum in Morgan's awareness. And leading them was Diana Steelheart, ancient guardian of old knowledge, her weathered face alight with the satisfaction of prophecy, finally moving toward fulfillment. Morgan Silverbane, once rejected Omega, now Crimson Luna, walked toward her grandmother's dwelling with a sense of purpose and belonging. She had thought forever lost on the night of her exile. There would be challenges ahead, dangers to face, a curse to break. But for the first time since Victor had shattered her world, she moved forward not in fear, but in hope. a hope shared by the growing pack that had chosen to follow her vision of what pack could be. 3 days passed in a whirlwind of preparation. The Valley of Whispers proved to be a community of nearly 200 wolves, all living according to the old ways, Alpha and Luna powers in balance, designations viewed as specializations rather than hierarchy, pack bonds formed through choice rather than dominance. Morgan spent hours each day with Eleanor and the Council of Elders, learning the intricate ritual that would be required to break the Blackthorn curse. Gabriel immersed himself in the Valley's archives, absorbing centuries of strategic knowledge that had been preserved from the time before Alpha supremacy. Marcus worked with the Valley's defensive forces, integrating his combat experience with their unique understanding of the territory's magical protections. The hunters who had followed Morgan from Ironwood territory found their own places within the Valley community, their skills valued and their perspectives on Victor's methods providing valuable intelligence as preparations advanced. Maya, in particular, proved to be a natural leader, coordinating between the newcomers and the Valley's established residents. Throughout it all, the pack bonds that had formed during their journey through the moon path continued to strengthen and expand. Morgan found herself connecting not just with her original followers, but with many of the Valley residents as well, creating a network of mutual support and belonging that grew more robust with each passing day. On the evening of the 3rd day, Morgan stood on a balcony outside her grandmother's dwelling, watching twilight settle over the valley. The dwelling itself had proven to be a comfortable structure built partially into the mountainside, filled with books, journals, and artifacts Elizabeth Silverbain had collected during her lifetime. Sleeping in her grandmother's bed, surrounded by her possessions and legacy, had given Morgan a sense of connection to her past that she had sorely missed during her exile. Gabriel joined her on the balcony, his quiet presence a comfort, as always. Through the bond, she could feel his mind working, analyzing the preparations they had made, calculating odds and contingencies with the precision that made him such a valuable strategist. "Everything is ready for tomorrow's ritual," he said, coming to stand beside her at the railing. "The artifacts have been prepared, the sacred circle established. Eleanor believes we have everything we need to break the curse." Morgan nodded absently, her gaze fixed on the distant mountains where the valley's magical barriers met the outside world. "And Victor?" "Our sentinels report he's assembled nearly 50 wolves, his remaining hunters plus reinforcements from 2 neighboring packs. They're probing the valley's defenses systematically, looking for weaknesses." Gabriel's tone remained measured, but through the bond, Morgan felt his concern. "They haven't found a way in yet, but they're getting closer. The magical barriers are strongest at the moonpath entrances, weaker along the ridgelines." "They'll find a way in eventually," Marcus said, joining them on the balcony. His warrior's instincts had kept him restless throughout the day, checking and rechecking defensive positions, drilling with the valley's protectors. Victor is many things, but stupid isn't one of them. He knows what's at stake. "The question is whether they'll break through before we complete the ritual," Morgan said quietly. "Or during it, when we'll be at our most vulnerable." The ritual to break the Blackthorn curse would require Morgan to channel her Luna power in ways she was only beginning to understand. According to Eleanor and the Council of Elders, she would be particularly vulnerable during the height of the ceremony, her consciousness partially separated from her body as she worked to unravel the magical binding that had limited Luna power for generations. "We'll protect you," Marcus said, with the simple certainty that characterized him. "The Valley's defenders are well trained, and I've positioned our best fighters at the most likely breach points. And I've prepared contingencies for every scenario we could anticipate," Gabriel added. "Whatever happens, we won't let Victor interrupt the ritual." Morgan turned from the railing to face her mates, gratitude and love flowing through the bond. "I know you'll do everything possible," she acknowledged, "but there's something else we need to discuss." She took a deep breath, steeling herself for a conversation she had been postponing. "Eleanor explained something about the ritual that I haven't shared with you yet." Both men tensed slightly, sensing the weight of what she was about to say. "Breaking the curse requires sacrifice," Morgan continued carefully. Not blood sacrifice or anything so dramatic, but there's a cost nonetheless. The Crimson Luna who breaks the binding must surrender something of value, something personal, something irreplaceable. What kind of sacrifice? Gabriel asked, his analytical mind immediately seeking parameters, boundaries. Morgan met his gaze steadily. According to Eleanor, it varies depending on the Luna performing the ritual. The magic demands a price equivalent to the power being unleashed. In my case, as a Crimson Luna with a triad bond. She hesitated, then forced herself to continue. There's a strong possibility I'll lose the ability to form pack bonds temporarily, perhaps for months, perhaps longer. Marcus frowned, confusion evident in his expression. But the pack bonds are already formed. Why would breaking the curse affect that? Not the existing bonds, Morgan clarified. Those should remain intact. But my ability to form new ones, to expand our pack beyond those already connected, that power may be dormant while I recover from the ritual. Gabriel's mind raced ahead, as it always did, to the strategic implications. That would limit our growth in the immediate aftermath, make us more vulnerable if we suffer losses. Yes, Morgan agreed. And there's more. The triad bond itself might be affected. Not broken, but possibly muted for a time. We'd still be connected, still be mates, but the intensity of the bond could be diminished until my Luna power recovers. Both men fell silent, absorbing this new information. Through the bond, Morgan felt their concern, their automatic protective instinct to shield her from harm, but also their understanding of what was at stake. "You still intend to perform the ritual," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. Morgan nodded. "This isn't just about us, or even about our pack. It's about every Luna alive today, and every Luna yet to be born. Breaking the curse will restore balance that has been missing from pack society for centuries. How could I choose not to act, knowing what I know now?" Gabriel moved closer, taking her hand in his. "We support your decision," he said simply. "Whatever comes after, we'll face it together." "As we have everything else," Marcus added, his larger hand enveloping both of theirs. "The bond might be muted, but it won't be gone, and neither will we." The depth of their commitment flowed through the connection between them, warming Morgan from within, despite the evening chill. These two wolves who had once watched her exile in silence had become the foundation upon which she now stood, their strength supporting her, their loyalty unwavering, their love a constant she had never expected to find. "There's something else I need to tell you," she said, a smile tugging at her lips despite the seriousness of the moment. "Something I've suspected for a few days now, that Eleanor confirmed this morning." Both men looked at her expectantly, curiosity flowing through the bond. "I'm pregnant," Morgan said simply. "With twins." Shock rippled through the triad bond, followed almost immediately by wonder and joy so intense it nearly brought her to her knees. Gabriel and Marcus stared at her in stunned silence, their emotions too overwhelming for words. "Twins?" Marcus finally managed, his voice rough with emotion. "You're sure?" Eleanor confirmed it. Morgan nodded. "She can sense them already. 2 distinct life sparks, too small to determine much else yet, but definitely 2. "Is this common?" Gabriel asked, his analytical mind struggling to process the emotional impact of the news. "In triad bonds, I mean. According to the Valley's records, it's rare but not unprecedented," Morgan explained. "Eleanor believes the twin pregnancy is connected to the triad bond, one child connected to each of you, though both carrying mixed bloodlines." "Will the ritual harm them?" Marcus asked, protective instinct flaring immediately. "Eleanor doesn't believe so," Morgan assured him. "They're protected by the bond we share, sheltered within my Luna power. If anything, breaking the curse might benefit them, ensuring they develop without the limitations that have affected Luna children for generations." Gabriel's hand moved almost reverently to rest against her still flat stomach. Through the bond, Morgan felt his mind racing, calculating timing, considering implications, already planning for a future that now included not just a mate, but children as well. "This changes everything," he murmured. "And nothing," Marcus countered, his hand joining Gabriel's. "We still complete the ritual. We still break the curse. We still build the pack we've envisioned." His dark eyes met Morgan's with fierce intensity. "But now we have even more reason to succeed." Morgan covered their hands with her own, the three of them connected physically as they were spiritually through the bond. "Tomorrow we face Victor and break the Blackthorn curse," she said with quiet determination. "And the day after that, we begin building a world our children can grow up in without fear or artificial limitations. A world where balance is restored, where Alpha and Luna powers complement rather than compete, where pack means family chosen through love rather than hierarchy imposed through dominance." Night had fallen fully now, stars emerging in the clear mountain sky above the Valley of Whispers. On the eve of their greatest challenge, Morgan Silverbane stood with her mates, their hands joined over the new lives growing within her, and felt not fear, but resolution. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together, as they had everything else. 3 months later, Morgan stood on the great balcony of what the newly formed Crimson Dawn Pack now called Council Hall, the central gathering place for the community that had blossomed in the Valley of Whispers. Spring had arrived in full force, transforming the valley floor into a riot of wildflowers and fresh green growth. The river sparkled in the late afternoon sunlight, its banks lined with new construction as the pack continued to expand both in numbers and infrastructure. The past 3 months had been challenging but rewarding beyond anything Morgan could have imagined during her lonely exile. Breaking the Blackthorn curse had indeed cost her the ability to form new pack bonds temporarily, but the existing connections had not only remained intact, but had grown stronger through the shared experience of the ritual and the battle that had accompanied it. Victor had breached the valley's defenses just as the ritual reached its climax, leading his reinforced hunters in a desperate assault designed to stop the ceremony before it could be completed. The fighting had been fierce, with casualties on both sides. Marcus had distinguished himself in the defense, personally holding a critical choke point against overwhelming numbers, while Gabriel coordinated the valley's forces with brilliant tactical precision. In the end, Victor himself had broken through to the ritual circle, only to find himself facing not just Morgan, but the combined power of the triad bond and the pack bonds connecting her to her followers. The confrontation had been brief but decisive. Victor's alpha dominance shattered against Morgan's fully manifested Luna power, his authority broken when she revealed the truth about the Blackthorn curse to every wolf present. Abandoned by his reinforcements, his hunters demoralized by the revelation of centuries of deception, Victor had fled the valley in disgrace. Reports from Ironwood territory indicated he had subsequently been challenged and defeated by a younger alpha who promised reforms based on the old knowledge Morgan had revealed. The breaking of the curse had sent ripples through werewolf society worldwide. Lunas everywhere had felt the change, their powers suddenly expanding beyond the artificial limitations that had constrained them for generations. The High Council of Alphas, initially outraged at what they viewed as insurrection, had been forced to acknowledge the truth when their own Lunas confirmed Morgan's claims about the Blackthorn curse. A delegation from the council had visited the valley just weeks after the ritual, ostensibly to investigate the rogue Luna situation, but in reality to assess the threat Morgan and her growing pack might pose to established power structures. They had departed with formal recognition of Crimson Dawn as a legitimate pack and grudging acknowledgement of Morgan's status as Luna, small victories in the larger struggle for true equality, but significant nonetheless. Through it all, Gabriel and Marcus had remained her unwavering support. Gabriel's strategic mind helping her navigate the political complexities of pack recognition, Marcus's protective strength ensuring her safety as her pregnancy advanced. The triad bond had indeed been muted following the ritual, as Eleanor had warned, but it remained a steady presence linking the three of them, and showed signs of gradually returning to its former intensity as Morgan's Luna power recovered. "Admiring the view?" Gabriel's voice drew Morgan from her reflections as he joined her on the balcony. At 41, his auburn hair showed the first touches of silver at the temples, but his hazel eyes remained sharp and perceptive as ever. "Admiring what we've built," she corrected, smiling as he slipped an arm around her waist. "Sometimes I still can't believe how far we've come in just 3 months. From a rejected Omega living alone in a cabin to Luna of a thriving pack," Gabriel mused, his analytical mind still frequently cataloging the remarkable transformation in their circumstances. "It's been quite a journey." "One that's just beginning," Marcus added, joining them at the balcony rail. At 43, the former head enforcer had lost none of his imposing physical presence, though the permanent tension that had characterized him in Victor's service had eased considerably. "Eleanor says the twins are developing stronger Luna markers than she's ever seen in utero. Apparently, breaking the curse has already affected their development." Morgan placed a hand on her slightly rounded belly, still not showing dramatically at 3 months, but definitely changing. "2 little Luna wolves," she said with wonder, "the first to be born free of the blackthorn curse in centuries." "The first of many," Gabriel predicted, his gaze sweeping over the valley where nearly 300 wolves now lived and worked together. In addition to the original valley residents and Morgan's initial followers, Crimson Dawn had welcomed refugees from multiple packs, Lunas and their supporters seeking freedom from the old hierarchies, wolves drawn to the vision of balance and choice rather than dominance and compulsion. The Council has received 3 more petitions for recognition from new packs forming under the balanced model, Marcus reported. "Apparently we've started something of a revolution." "Good," Morgan said firmly. "It's long overdue." The sun was beginning to set, painting the valley in shades of gold and amber that reminded Morgan of the Luna power that now flowed freely through her veins. In the center of the settlement, wolves were gathering for the evening meal, a communal tradition they had established to strengthen pack bonds and build community among the diverse wolves who had chosen to make Crimson Dawn their home. "We should join them," Gabriel suggested, noting the gathering below. "Eleanor wants to begin the naming ceremony planning. Apparently there are traditional rituals for Luna twins that haven't been performed in generations." Morgan smiled, remembering the elderly Luna's excitement when she had confirmed the twin pregnancy. Eleanor Wintermoon had become something of a surrogate grandmother to Morgan, filling the void left by Elizabeth Silverbane with her wisdom and guidance. "Just a few more minutes," Morgan requested, savoring the peaceful moment with her mates. "I'm still getting used to this. Having a home, having a pack, having a future worth planning for." Both men moved closer, flanking her as they so often did, their presence a tangible reassurance that she was no longer alone, no longer rejected, no longer exiled. Through the bond, muted though it remained, flowed their unwavering love and commitment to her, to their unborn children, to the pack they were building together. Morgan Silverbane, once Omega, now Crimson Luna, stood between the mates who had crossed ice and fire to find her, overlooking the pack that had formed around her vision of what wolves could be together. The journey from that blood moon night, when 2 freezing wolves had begged entry to her cabin, had been arduous, dangerous, transformative, and it was only just beginning. "I love you," she said simply, the words encompassing both Gabriel and Marcus, the bond they shared, the future they were creating together. "Whatever comes next, whatever challenges we face, I love you." "Always have," Gabriel replied softly, echoing words spoken months ago in a snowbound cabin. "Always will," Marcus completed, the triad speaking as one as they had since the bond first formed. The sun slipped behind the western mountains, but a new day awaited, and for the first time since her rejection and exile, Morgan Silverbane faced the coming dawn not with fear but with hope. Hope for herself, for her mates, for her unborn children, and for the pack that had chosen to follow her vision of what pack could truly be. Balance restored, bonds freely chosen, legacy secured, a new dawn indeed.